Zheng Hajin, an assassin in the service of the righteous Heavenly Alliance, faced numerous enemies. An army of heavily armed men gathered behind him, thinking he was too arrogant. With no intention of surrendering, he forced his enemies to rush at him, pointing their spears directly at his back. However, he could not be killed easily. One by one, his enemies were defeated. The absolute mastery of the sword turned their bodies into two parts. Chan had already lost count of how many enemies he had destroyed. The problem was that they were like ants in an anthill, and they were coming one after another. Blood was filling the air around him, and his enemies were chasing him relentlessly, but Zheng kept killing them. They shouted that his last seconds of life were close, but he only asked if they wanted him dead. The freedom he had so desperately sought for the past 30 years was one step away, and he couldn't let it go. Zheng promised himself that he would kill everyone if it would help him gain his freedom. He shouted loudly to his enemies that they would die themselves, and he proved it in practice until his commanders called for him to stop. The faces of the enemies were filled with fear when they saw his actions. Zheng crossed the swords of his enemies that they had raised against him, and using them as a support, stood on them. Then he gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, ready for the final battle. Pushing off, Zheng leapt upward with such force that everything around him shone with the energy he radiated. His enemies exclaimed in awe that they were facing one of the 10 strongest martial artists, admiring his skills. They also called him the best killer in the world, watching his movements in the air. The king of assassins, Zheng Hajin, with rage and a burning desire for freedom, jumped down. Like a bolt of lightning, he struck with all his strength at the place where the enemy was standing. Only a deep crater remained in that place, and the enemies lay motionless, without signs of life. "How tired I am," he said to himself, looking at the hilt of the sword that had killed so many people that day. Looking around, he realized that the enemies had finally retreated, but he heard more screams. And then he realized that they were still coming at him, not giving him a break. He pulled his sword out of the ground, which was already covered in blood. How much longer can this go on? He thought, feeling his sword begin to dull. But the enemies were not getting any smaller. Were they really that desperate not to let him get free? At such moments, it was impossible to restrain himself, and his rage grew even more intense, his eyes glowing red. He raised his sword to his head and shouted that he would kill everyone, making several 360-degree rotations around his axis with the sword. He scattered his enemies, and a yellow glow from his energy appeared around him. As he walked forward, he dragged his sword behind him, laughing at the words he heard about being the best killer and carrying the title of king. But in reality, he was only a soulless and cruel demon, the dog of the leader of the righteous Heavenly Alliance. "You killed following orders, but what do you know about life? Even in the afterlife, your name is cursed," the voice in his head said. His life was filled with the deaths of those he had killed, and his entire path was marked by death. This voice was his inner voice that did not give him peace. After the bloody battle he had just experienced, Zheng was wounded. He had lost a lot of blood, and it was already difficult to stay on his feet. Falling to his knees, he told himself that he would survive. But he reminded himself that he had lived his entire life as a dog for those bastards from the Alliance. "Damn it, I almost got my freedom by breaking all the chains they had me bound with," he thought in despair. Gritting his teeth, he shouted to himself, "Pull yourself together!" He slammed his sword down on the ground and plunged the blade into the stone beneath his feet. Relying on this sword, he found the strength to get up. Step by step, he continued to walk forward, despite the pain. He was almost there. Just a little further, he told himself. Somewhere nearby, there had to be a storehouse where he could find elixirs and herbs to heal his wounds and finally become a free man. He was already a couple of steps away from this storehouse. "Hold on, it's just a little bit further," he kept telling himself, trying not to lose consciousness. The pain was so intense that he could barely stand and fell on his back. But there was another problem. He was hungry. He had eaten only a few pieces of beef jerky over the past week, and he could have died of hunger before his wounds did. His hunger was so strong that you could say he was hungry like a wolf. Looking at the lonely moon in the sky, he thought, "I wish I had some dumplings." Suddenly, a fast-moving body appeared in the background of the moon, rapidly approaching. Without a word, the enemy attacked him, thrusting his sword directly at the spot where Zheng was lying. He barely had time to jump away and avoided the blow. The energy from the blow was so strong that even the stone beneath him split into two. The enemy's technique was so skillful that even Zheng, being the best assassin in the world, did not notice its approach. Evaluating the enemy's appearance, Chan realized that his skill was at a very high level. They clashed one-on-one, and Zheng barely had time to bounce back, retreating. But this technique seemed very familiar to him. Watching the enemy wield the sword, Chan thought, "Somewhere I have seen this technique before. Somewhere it is familiar to me." At that moment, the enemy attacked with a swing of his sword, and a wave of energy flew out from this blow, cutting down 2 trees in its path. Time after time, the enemy attacked, and Chan barely managed to avoid the blows, leaving only the stumps of the felled trees behind. This martial art was so powerful that the aura of the sword alone could destroy an entire forest. After several attacks, Chan landed right in front of the enemy. He realized that he was facing the strongest killer in the south-central valley. "Lord of Death," he addressed the enemy, noting that he now understood why the righteous Heavenly Alliance was pursuing him. But he did not expect to be joined by the elite of the Steel Blood Fortress and the 8 elite warriors of the Steel King. He then asked if he really thought that Morim would recognize him as the strongest martial artist after he attacked a man exhausted from fighting 100 men. Despite his fatigue, Jung confidently declared that he had the strength to overcome this bastard. Hearing this, the enemy's eyes widened, nervously reacting to Chan's words. They both filled with energy and took off again, continuing the battle. They put all their strength into this fight, demonstrating their excellence as swordsmen. Feeling his sword as an extension of his arm, Jung made a clear stroke that swept through the enemy's body. All this happened in the air, after which they both came down to the ground. Blood began to flow under the enemy's mask, covering his face. Chan's sword was painted red, a color that symbolized blood. The blood that had been in the enemy's body was now coloring the blade of his sword. He stood with his sword down, watching the enemy slowly fall. However, he realized that this was not the end, and he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he said, "Come out if you have already enjoyed the spectacle." At that moment, a very strong, scarlet-colored energy began to manifest. He realized that it was the Demon Queen. When she appeared, she looked like a very beautiful and gentle woman. She addressed Chan, saying that it was a great honor to be a part of his memories, and asked if it had been 6 years. Then she added, "It's been a long time." The moon illuminated the place where they stood, between 2 rocks, creating a mystical atmosphere. The light also fell on the dead bodies lying on the ground. The first elder of the righteous Heavenly Alliance and his men came here and examined all the corpses. His servants reported that all of these bodies belonged to martial artists from the Steel Blood Fortress. The elder understood this, but he could not even think that Chang had been able to break through the net system he had set up and kill so many masters. He recognized that Chan had indeed earned his nickname, the King of Killers. The elder then raised his hand to gather all his men to him. They sat before him and bowed to show their respect. And then the order was given. Follow the traces of the Demon Queen's deadly energy, because Jung Hajin would be there. The Demon Queen Kwak Sogyo uses rejuvenation techniques to maintain her beauty, even though she is over 60 years old. Her appearance can be misleading, because it seems that she wouldn't even hurt a fly, but in reality, this is far from the case. She is a real maniac who cannot go a single night without taking someone's life. As if the martial arts masters from the Steel Blood Fortress weren't enough for Chan, they've sent this crazy woman. It seems like they're ready to catch him at any cost. Clenching his sword, Chan thought he still had a trick up his sleeve. She noticed the sword pointed at her and said sarcastically that it was a big disappointment when a man with whom she had a special relationship pulled a weapon on her. "Shove that special relationship of yours far away," he replied, and asked her to stop talking nonsense. "How rude," she remarked, and said that she doubted he would have the strength to pull off even one shot, offering him an easier option. He didn't want an easier option, and Zhang offered to see how many punches he could land. He said that there was no reason to be afraid of a 60-year-old woman who did nothing but scratch her head. At this point, her expression changed when he called her old, and she promised to show him his own spine if he called her that again. However, Zhang was not afraid and started calling her an old woman again. He repeated the word over and over again, saying that she was old and had become even more sensitive with age. Her face changed with every word he said, but suddenly she smiled, clearly thinking of something. This smile alerted Chang, and she began to say that she believed that the Heavenly Alliance had made him the best assassin. She also said that she now understood why the Fortress of Steel Blood had given her this task. She noted that his core energy is incredibly pure, and it definitely belongs to one of the Great 9 sects. Kwak Sogyo added that she realized that Zhang had learned the martial arts of the 9 sects and the hidden skill because, despite their efforts to capture him alive, he was able to kill all of those fighters. At that moment, he realized why she was standing still and wasting time with words, even though in other circumstances she would have already spilled blood all over the place. He realized that she wanted information about the martial arts of the 9 sects and dirt on the righteous Heavenly Alliance. She had thought that Chang was only good with a sword, but his words made her realize that he was quite intelligent. However, Zhang asked her a question. Doesn't the Demon Queen really want the secrets of the Steel Blood Fortress? He seemed to have figured out her plans. She explained that she didn't really care about the Fortress of Steel Blood or the righteous Heavenly Alliance. She was only interested in the 9 sects martial arts techniques, and if Chang told her what he knew, she promised to let him live. She offered him this deal, but Chang responded with a question. Why are there so many incompetent bastards in the Great Lakes? He said that it was not profitable for him, as he was now a hair's breadth away from death. She asked if it was because of the parasite in his blood. To this, Zhang reacted quite sharply. She called him an executioner for those who betrayed the righteous heavenly alliance. The parasite in his body does not let him forget about himself and executes him in case of betrayal. She went on to explain that he had refused her mercy. His life and death are in the hands of the ruler of the righteous heavenly alliance, and he can never betray the alliance. She also added that once she frees him from the parasite, all the monsters that bind him to the alliance will fall, and he will only be required to reveal the technique to her. She then explained that thanks to her study of the demonic arts of the god of death, she was well versed in poisons and toxins. It was because of this that she was able to get rid of the parasite in his body with her demonic power. Jung lowered his head down and was silent for a few seconds. He stood silently, clutching the sword in his hand. He just listened to her offer to give him the so-called freedom. For this, he only needed to teach her the art of the 9 sects. Her response to his words was a loud laugh, and he turned to her. He asked her if she really believed that the reason he was being pursued by the Alliance was because he had simply run away from them. This was extremely surprising for her to hear. He then added that he is one of the top 10 strongest martial artists and learned how to get rid of the parasite a few years ago. He needed to become strong enough to be able to break the grid system. It took him a long time, but he thought he had almost achieved his goal. When she told him she would let him live, he didn't believe that nonsense, because he knew he couldn't trust a word she said. He had spent 30 years with these scoundrels, and he would not allow her to deceive him anymore, nor would he allow anyone else to do so. At the top of his voice, he shouted at her, "Get out of my way, you brute!" He warned her that if she turned around and left right now, she could continue her miserable life. She asked herself how he could say that when he could barely stand on his feet. She was not the type to let herself be humiliated either. She saw in his eyes that he had no intention of teaching her anything, and he saw in her eyes that she would not let him live and would not keep her promise. And then, finally, the true face of the Demon Queen Kwak was revealed, and she screamed at him, "Die, you useless bastard!" In response, Jung shouted, "Die, you damn old woman!" A sphere of pure power exploded from his chest, forming a large wave of aura. This wave subsequently turned into a huge dome that collided with her. The explosion was so powerful that it destroyed everything in its path. The trees could not stand it and fell under the pressure of this incredible energy. But they both stood on the battlefield, holding their swords against each other. The energy in both of them was so powerful that they were frozen in place. However, it had long claws filled with energy, and it sliced through Chong's arm with them. The pain, like sharp needles, went through his arm and spread throughout his body. At that moment, the first elder appeared, holding his sword in his hands. How long has he been here? Thought Jung when he saw the first elder. The sword flashed like lightning, and Jung's legs were cut off from his body. After that, his arms were also cut off, and the sword was floating in the air with them. The pain was incredible, and he screamed in excruciating pain. The Demon Queen and the First Elder overpowered Chong, acting together. It was the last seconds of his life, and there was no chance of winning. Blood was flowing from his mouth from the numerous wounds he had received. Without a single limb, he fell to his knees. The Demon Queen took his head in her hands and complimented him, saying, "Without limbs, you look even more beautiful, as I see." She thought that his head was also superfluous and did not want to hear another word from him. After wishing him a safe journey to the next world, she beamed with joy, like a 17-year-old girl enjoying the murder she had just committed. It was true bliss for her. Was this miserable moment the last thing he would see? He just wanted to live an ordinary life, to be an ordinary man for a second, as if in a sweet dream. Was it really impossible? If only he had a second chance. These were the last thoughts he had before he died. The main sanctuary of the heavenly demon cult. A young man lies unconscious in bed. The light from the windows falls on his young body and his long hair. In the depths of his soul and thoughts, words are heard. If I had a second chance. His eyes open wide and he wakes up. Smoke rises from a pipe filled with tobacco. Nitz listens to the man smoking the pipe, who tells him that the divine teachings are indisputable and all demons will fall before him. He is the fourth young master of the divine cult. The doctor reports that the third one has a pulse. The doctor then said that Cierian would die that night, smiling slyly after this phrase. The fourth man blew smoke out of his mouth and replied, "I see." Everything was going better than he had expected. When he was younger, Hajin and his friend decided to take some time off after they finished their business of killing people. They were young and planned to rest for a short time, because the leader told them that they had to stay inconspicuous. The boy, holding an interesting thing in front of Hajin, asked if he wanted to look at it. The boy opened his hand, and in it was a wooden bird figurine carved out of wood. Hajin asked him if he had carved it himself, but he heard a counter-question in response. "Aren't you tired of living like a killer?" The boy was going to escape from here no matter what it took, and spend the rest of his life free as a bird. He dreamed of finding some god-forsaken village and settling there forever, where he would smell fresh grass and not rotting blood. Jung Hajin immediately said that he also wanted to go there, to that village with grass, but he was told that he shouldn't even think about it. Why not? he asked, asking him to take him with him, but he just told him to shut up. At that moment, Hajin suddenly became older, and blood appeared on his face. It was the blood of his friend, who was lying dead on the ground, and Hajin did not understand what was happening. The words were heard nearby. "You were saved, but you refused mercy." The man told Jung to watch and remember. This is the end of all who dare to betray the righteous heavenly alliance. A blood parasite would judge his treachery. At this point, the face of the demon queen appeared, shouting that a head was not necessary. Then the face of Chan appeared, and he was scared as hell. After that, the queen lifted Chan's severed head up, holding it in her hands. He suddenly jumped out of bed. It was only a dream, and he screamed loudly. Was it really just a dream, he thought, holding his head, remembering how this mad woman had just beheaded him. He looked around, but could not figure out where he was. The room was luxuriously furnished, and he couldn't figure out what kind of place it was. Suddenly he heard footsteps, someone approaching him. It was a girl named Enwa who brought food on a tray for the young master and said it was for him. However, when she entered the room, she saw that he was not on the bed, although he was supposed to be there, recovering from his serious condition. The next moment he appeared behind her, holding his chopstick right next to her food, ready to pierce her with ease at any moment. Quietly, almost in a whisper, he warned her. "Don't make a sound, or I bet your throat." He asked her, "Who are you?" and whether she had been sent here from the Fortress of Steel Blood. Stammering with fear, her eyes wide open, she explained that she was his maid named Enwa, and asked what was wrong with him. The fact that she called him young master made him even more suspicious. He asked her why she called him that and told her not to bother him and to tell him the truth. Who brought him here? "Brought you?" the girl asked in surprise, the tray in her hands barely holding on because she was very scared. She added that he had been here for a long time. He had been unconscious for about 6 months due to a chi blockage, and only regained consciousness a few nights ago. What the hell is going on? He asked himself, not understanding how this was possible, since he was already dead. He asked her again to stop pretending and tell him the truth, but she assured him that it was the truth, and added that she was bringing him food so he could eat when he woke up. He turned his head to the right, where the mirror hung, and was shocked by what he saw. Who the fuck is this, he asked himself, seeing a thin, exhausted guy in the reflection. The memory of the moment when the first elder cut off his legs flashed before his eyes, and it seemed that it was not just a dream. Then what is this? Is it reincarnation? He wondered. He couldn't understand whether it was his previous life or something else, or how this could have happened. Enwa noticed something was wrong, because her master was thinking for a long time. His face expressed a complete lack of understanding of what was happening, and he could not figure out where he was. Frightened, he took a few steps back and leaned his back against the door, which began to open. Putting his head through the door, he began to look inside with bated breath. He could not understand how such a place could exist in Murim. At the door stood a doctor and another strange man whom he could not recognize. This man's face was quite serious. He had a beard and long hair. Who the hell is this? He asked himself over and over again, expecting at least some kind of reaction from this man. Suddenly the man slammed his knee loudly on the floor, quickly getting down on one knee. "The divine teachings are indisputable. All demons weep before you," he exclaimed. "Congratulations on your recovery, third young master," came the man's reply. He could not understand what he was hearing and could only guess that if this was a divine cult in Murim, it must be a demon cult. It was already evening, and the evening lamps were shining, bringing light to this world, the world of Murim. The man walked on the red carpet straight to the chair in which a very important person was sitting. In this place, the man also uttered the same phrase. "The divine teachings are irrefutable, and all demons will fall before you." He explained that the first imperial guard of the divine cult welcomed the demon ruler. This man was the head of the first imperial guard of the divine cult of the heavenly demon, Mudam. He was sitting directly opposite his master. The master asked him what brought him here today. He said that he had a report. "The third young master has regained consciousness," was his message. "But there was one thing," he continued, noting that he had completely lost his strength and was exhausted to the point of death. He asked his master what he was going to do with the third young master. "The first imperial guard!" the master shouted loudly, and his voice echoed in Mudam's ears. The Lord's voice was so strong that the robe Mudam was wearing blew away as if in a gust of wind. The candles that illuminated the room almost went out because of this. Mudam asked to express the will of his master. The master ordered that no one should come to him with reports until the closing ceremony, which would take place in 3 months. After that, he closed his eyes, which glowed like hot coals, and said nothing more. As long as his eyes were open, Mudam looked directly into them without making a single sound. When his eyes closed, Mudam bowed low before the master. After that, he said that he sincerely hoped to fulfill his master's great will. It is also called the Millennial Demonic Cult, although it was founded by Master Murima in time immemorial, and is now considered the oldest and most destructive demonic organization. The cult is the strongest in the martial arts, and by its very existence instills fear throughout Murim, being a symbol of chaos. Although the righteous Celestial Alliance and the Fortress of Steel Blood are superior in numbers, in the world they, along with the divine cult of the Heavenly Demon, are called the Mighty Triad, where the Heavenly Demon stands above war and plague, being the most destructive demonic group. And this is where Zhang found himself. He can't understand how he ended up here. Is it really true? He pondered this as he looked out onto the street. But why? He asked himself again and again. And why a demon cult? He needed to pull himself together, stay steady, figure out what was going on, and plan his next steps. Last night, Zhang went out. He used the technique of stealth to help him do this, and decided to follow people. He overheard them talking about how the strongest of the demonic cult's disciples, the third young master, had awakened again, and soon rivers of blood would be shed again in a slaughter for a place in the hierarchy. People were discussing that he had lost all his skills and had woken up after 6 months of coma caused by blocking Qi. If he still had something left, then the nickname Monster was not in vain. They kept saying that it was better not to get close to him because he could be dangerous. Zhang heard all this while sitting on the roof. He realized that this rascal he had been possessed by was a master at creating problems and a real monster. How did he even live? But now Zhang was sure that this was a demonic cult. To escape, he had to think carefully about a plan. He had only been outside for a short time, but the stealth technique had already exhausted him to the limit. Looking in the mirror at his matchstick-like body, he was still grateful to have this life. He looked at his arm and realized that the first thing he needed to do was to restore his body. He sat down in a meditation position and began to meditate. Closing his eyes, he tried to feel all the energy points in his body. As he thought, all 8 prominent meridians were in a complete mess. He tried to cleanse himself of this small and rotten energy center. Look for the truth in the midst of chaos. Break through the emptiness. Open the channels of life. Bring clarity to your thoughts. And the world will reward you with good fortune. After these words, the temperature in the room began to rise. The air became thicker. Using the boundless technique, Chan was going to expel all the stagnant energy from his body. Putting all his strength into it, his body shone with a blue light, and energy began to flow out of him like an ocean full of life, giving him back his strength. By reworking the 9 sex martial arts techniques from his previous life, he created his own technique, which he called the Boundless. For a person without status, this boundless technique was a real salvation. At that moment, he realized that he needed to do the same. After completing the meditation, he began to open his eyes. He could not understand if this was really the limit of his capabilities. But small victories are still victories. The room was eerily quiet. It had been a long time since he woke up, and apart from the doctor, no one had visited him. The girl who brought him food on a tray was still shaking with fear. Even among the demons, this rascal was called a monster, which made Chan realize that he was a pain in the ass. But until he figured everything out, he had to act carefully without haste. 3 whole months had passed. The smoke was rising from the pipe just as it had been 3 months ago. I asked the man a question. 3 whole months have passed, and the third young gentleman was just eating. And nothing happened. On the contrary, he began to recover quickly. Although the doctor had said that the more power a person has, the more damage he can do, what happened was very strange even to him. The 4th young master of the heavenly demon divine cult, named Hong Yo-moon, exhaled smoke. He then confessed that the 3rd young master always exceeded his expectations. The doctor asked him what he wanted to do next. The doctor asked when Rin would arrive. He replied that it would probably be very soon. The 4th young gentleman recalled that Rin's last visit was about 6 months ago, if memory serves. He felt something interesting was coming and asked the doctor to observe and report back. Meanwhile, his fist hit the wall. His hands hit the wall, which was as hard as concrete. Chan trained tirelessly to get his body back in shape at least a little bit. He practiced each punch with precision, hitting it several hundred times in one go. Zhang practiced a 2-sided stance to be able to attack from both the left and right sides. He did everything so precisely that the ground under his feet, made of stone, began to crack from the amount of training. He also did not leave energy aside and practiced energy punches. Through numerous training sessions, everything became more refined, and his punches were incredibly beautiful, cutting through the air in their path. His training could be heard clearly on the street because he didn't do it quietly. He was doing his best. Sweat was pouring down his body. After the workout, the entire room was trashed. There were dents in the floor from practicing kicks, the walls were broken, and all the wooden mannequins were broken. For the past 3 months, he had been trying to bring this exhausted body back to normal, and he managed to remove all the stagnant and demonic energy. MANHUA brought him food and fed him well. To regain his strength properly, he had to eat a lot. But at one point, when he was turning the bowl over to his mouth, he felt something strange. There was a giant beetle with many legs in the bowl. The beetle fell to the floor, and the contents of the bowl spilled out with it. "What happened?" asked MANHUA, noticing his reaction. He began to feel a strong energy and heard a question in his head. Did you really think you could escape from the righteous heavenly alliance? You brainless idiot. It was as if this man appeared above him and continued to speak. I have made you the best killer in the world, and what have you done to repay me? Even after you die, you will not get rid of the righteous heavenly alliance, the voice repeated, and Chong felt the blood bug activate again in his body. He could feel the parasite acting again inside his body. Young master. The word was repeated several times, and he looked up at Manhwa, asking, What? She only asked if he was okay. He looked down at his plate and wondered if it was just a vision. Bowing, the girl said she would leave then. Zhang looked up and asked himself, Is this the new life I have always dreamed of? But he had one more question. Will he be able to be free now? After a hard workout, he put on his normal everyday clothes. Outside the door, he heard some people talking. Is it that rascal from the demon cult? He thought. The door suddenly opened without knocking, slamming loudly. A beautiful girl walked in and said to him, It's been a long time. He could not give her a clear answer because he did not even know who she was. Next to him was Yunhua, who had been slapped at the entrance for trying to stop the girl and first report her arrival to him. Because of this, he looked at her and could not understand who she was. Without saying anything, she just walked into the room and, glancing at Chan, said that he looked better than she expected. Chan realized that he had to think of a way out of this situation. Are you just going to leave me standing there? She asked, and then added that she would like a cup of tea. Zhang realized that in such cases it is better to run away, and he started to run away, saying that he urgently needed to go somewhere. At the same moment, she snapped her fingers. After that, 2 giant shadows appeared over Chan. Her 2 bodyguards quickly stopped him and prevented him from leaving. They blocked the exit from the room with their bodies. She began a dialogue, saying that she needed to discuss something with the 3rd young master, and did not know how long it would take. She asked the guards to stop any escape attempts, and they replied in one voice that everything would be done. After that, the door was closed in front of Chan. The girl sat down and asked him to do the same, adding that they had a lot to discuss. Chan did not know what to do. He stood there looking at the door, his back turned to her, and thought. He told her that he hadn't even had time to rest after his workout and asked her to wait for him to change. She agreed, but emphasized that it would be great if he had no other plans. One quick glance at her was enough to realize that she was not normal. Chan had no choice, so he turned to Enwa and asked her to follow him. She didn't understand why he was asking, but he asked her anyway. Who are you? He explained that he was uncomfortable with the fact that after waking up from the blockage, his head was splitting, and so he could not remember anything yet. The girl began to cry and said, Young master, you cannot leave us so early. But he was surprised. Why should I die? Because he had just regained consciousness. Yunhua began to explain that her name is Hong Yorin. She is a demoness associated with and working for a religious center for inner enlightenment, and she comes from the Yaksa family, part of the demon cult. She is so strong that she is considered the most talented student, and she performs her tasks flawlessly. In addition, she is recognized as a heroine by the head of the demon cult himself, and is the younger sister of the 4th young master. Chan realized that the main question of this conversation was why she came to him and what kind of relationship they had. The details remained unknown to the girl, but she explained that he had met with her frequently during the last month before her coma. So their relationship is clearly not simple. He thanked her for bringing him up to speed and asked how her face felt. It must have been painful, so he asked her to go rest. Such attention from him was strange to her, because in his past life he was completely different, someone who constantly yelled at her and wished her dead. After that, he went into the girl's room. He asked her what had brought her here. This question and his strange tone seemed very unusual to her. She wondered what was wrong with him. He seemed to be completely different, like heaven and earth compared to the past. Even the sparkle in his eyes had faded. She realized that the rumors that he had lost his fighting skills after the blockade were true. She decided not to hide anything and get straight to the point, because she knew that was the best way. She pulled out 2 pieces of paper and explained that it was a contract with their seals, asking if he remembered it. She added that if either of them violated the terms or a situation arose where they were forced to do so, there would be punishment. The total amount of money she invested in his treatment was about 1,000 naira, and other expenses were added to this, which exceeded 2,000 naira. She decided not to mention the details because they were close enough, she said. And then he realized that he had been supported with money and medicine by the younger sister of the 4th young owner. The total amount was 6,000 naira, and she asked him to return the money immediately, or to sign a contract on when he could repay the debt. Using the situation with his condition and blocked chi, she put herself in the role of a victim, canceled the contract, and now wants her money back. Zhang planned to gain a reputation and then get rich. She ignored the fact that he was bedridden. This girl was meddling where she shouldn't be. After that, Zhang said he could easily pay off the amount of money. He asked Wu to prepare paper, brushes, and ink. He didn't care if she got into trouble. He just had to give her what she wanted, and he was planning to leave anyway. This move on Chan's part made her think. The third young owner was signing contracts carelessly. Even though he was not gifted with intelligence, this carelessness made her suspicious. Because of this, she decided to say something else to Zhang. Leaning back in her chair, she said in a proud voice that if he couldn't pay back the money, he would have to come at her first call. She seemed intent on treating him like a loyal dog. This little thing got on his nerves. She got up from her chair and asked if that was all. She then explained that the contract would end when she received her money. Until then, they had to treat each other with respect because they were bound by a joint contract. A sly smile lit up her face and she looked him straight in the eye. Respectfully? Asked Zhang again. He asked her if she really wanted him to respect her after signing such a contract. Then Zhang asked Wu to call the commander of the Imperial Guard. Why are you calling him all of a sudden? Asked Hong Yorin. The door opened and Mudam stood there. His greeting always began with the words, "The divine teachings are unquestionable. All demons will fall down before you. I welcome the third young master." After that, he asked how he could be of service. Prepare the cart, Zhang asked him, adding that he needed it. Mudam tried to remind the young master of his body condition. However, Zhang turned and said that he was going to see the demon lord, and ordered him to prepare the cart and inform the lord of his visit. He repeated himself. Tell him that the third disciple wishes to see his master. It will be done, Mudam replied. He promised to send a letter to the palace, and as soon as he received permission, he would begin to prepare a carriage. In a frightened voice, Yoren turned to the third young master. What is it? He asked her, and said that he could not stand it any longer. He suggested that she find out if the demon lord thought the contract was fair. She asked him if he was condemning them both to death and what he wanted to hear in response. Zhang did not want to answer anything, and only asked her if there was a problem with it. She continued to mutter in a frightened voice that if the lord found out about the contract she had made with him, then Zhang would also be in danger. He agreed with her and admitted that he could also be punished for it, or even banished, especially since he had already lost all his fighting skills. However, he asked what would happen to her. Everyone knows how wonderful her family is, but this excuse only works in some cases. The worst-case scenario for her is arrest, and it will be impossible to avoid it. Being arrested for not raising her daughter properly would mean that the entire Yox family would be at risk. Fear did not leave her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks and forehead. With a wave of his hand, Zhang said he had a walk planned and would be leaving. She shouted after him, "Wait!" She asked if he really didn't want to become supreme ruler. "Ruler with your position? That's ridiculous," he told her. He then asked if she hadn't come here with the realization that he had no chance. And he said to her, "I will see you at the Lord's palace," while she clenched her fist in anger. He had barely taken 2 steps forward when she asked him a question. "What do you want me to do?" He turned and asked what she meant. She repeated, "What do I have to do?" Checkmate, Zhang thought, turning his head back to look at her. She was asking what she had to do to keep him from going to the Demon Lord. A moment later, Zhang's hand was holding the contract. The contract was right in front of her nose, and Zhang asked her to break it. He demanded that she tear it apart with her own hands. Again, his thoughts returned to his past life. Wasn't this hell enough for him? He had come here to find peace, to perhaps settle down in some godforsaken countryside where it always smells like fresh grass, not rotten blood. He looked at his friend and remembered these words that he had said to him. Next to his friend was a little boy, also dead. The people searched every corner, but found no one else. For betraying the alliance and committing treason, there must be someone else here. Because of this, Zhang ordered the area to be searched again. His eyes fell on the same scene again, the hand of a little boy clutching a wood-carved bird figure. Zhang walked over to him, put his sword on the ground, and sat down next to him. He carefully took the bloody bird from the boy's hand. He began to look at it carefully, thinking about the meaning of life. Who has the right to take life? Who can give it? Suddenly, a sound came from the road, and Chan turned his head. By then, his men were already dead. This guy had killed everyone in his path. His gaze was as cold as ice. And now he was approaching Chan, who was sitting next to the dead boy. Like a ninja, he rushed forward. On his way, he killed another soldier, cutting off part of his sword. He ran so fast that it was hard to even see him, and then he grabbed the little boy's body. Before he could even realize how it all happened, a drop of the boy's blood fell on his face. Tears were streaming down his face from the pain he felt while holding the little boy. "Wait!" exclaimed Zhang. He asked him to listen to him and explained that they had been ordered to kill the traitors to the Alliance and called them traitors. "I really didn't know," Zhang repeated, making excuses. He walked closer to the man who was crying over the dead body, and standing behind him, repeated it again. "I didn't know." The boy could barely contain his pain and was crying loudly. He asked Zhang, "Is killing people just a job for you? Taking the lives of others? Is it really that easy for you?" he repeated. Chan came closer and took him in his arms, calming him down. But he broke away and shouted that the killer knew nothing about real life. He kept repeating that he would curse him even in the afterlife, and that Zhang's life would turn into the suffering of all those he had killed. This flashback hit Chan like a stone, reminding him of his past life. As he rode in the carriage, he couldn't stop thinking about those he had killed. In front of him, the girl held a handkerchief with a strand of hair on it. It was the hair of the master's servants who had even helped him dress. They took care of him, doing everything he ordered. "Congratulations on the fulfillment of your great will, Lord of Demons." The words were heard in the room. These were the words the Lord heard when he entered his room. Reaching for a glass decorated with dragon patterns, he took a sip. His clothes were also covered with images of dragons. Holding a bowl, also decorated with dragons, he asked if it was true that the third disciple had expressed a desire to meet him. "Yes," the servant replied, and added that he had already sent a carriage to his residence, so he would be here very soon. The master turned to the head of the Imperial Guard and asked him to listen to him. Meanwhile, he poured himself a drink from a glass. Mudam waited impatiently for something to be said. But the host took his time, taking sips after sips. Then he asked me to accompany the third disciple to the demonic Pavilion of Justice. The mention of the demonic Pavilion of Justice surprised Mudam, but he did not ask anything, only watched the master pour himself a second drink. At that moment, Mudam understood everything. He bowed down and said that his master's will would be done. The master was stretched out from his hard life, because it must be hard for him to be constantly watched by servants and to have to manage everything. Is it really winter already? He thought, not noticing how quickly the seasons pass. It was very cold, and Zhang could not get used to the aura of chaos that appeared every time the doctor checked his pulse. After the examination, the doctor noted that over the past few days, the damaged veins had recovered a bit, and not just the veins. Even though he's taking herbs and being treated, his regenerative abilities are still incredible. This really surprised the doctor. The look in the doctor's eyes seemed strange to him. What was this man looking at so intently? The doctor apologized, bowing to Chong, and explained that he was very surprised by the speed with which the patient was getting better. He had no idea what the doctor's real intentions were. The doctor believed that at this rate, glaucoma treatment would no longer be necessary, and told Chong that it was better to focus on a healthy diet and the best healing potions. After that, Zhang expressed a desire to ask something. "What are these best healing potions?" he asked, because this was the first time he had heard of them. The doctor began to explain to Chong about the healing potion. He called it a decoction of healing herbs to restore energy. It was made by masters and served only to the high-ranking members of the main sanctuary. Zhang pondered. Restoring energy. No matter what you call it, the essence is the same. It's medicine. If the decoction really helps, I will recover even faster, he thought. The doctor said he would return in 2 days and wished him a speedy recovery. This town seemed quite unusual to Chan. Simply put, he thought it was gloomy. Looking out the window, his thoughts returned to the Demon Lord. It seems that they will meet soon. And Zhang was curious about the kind of person the Demon Lord is. There is not a single soul in Kangho who does not recognize the absolute power of the Supreme Demon. This is an obvious fact, because he is the most powerful person in the heavens. He has never utilized his powers to their fullest extent, and yet he is recognized as the strongest being in Marima. Meeting him can be extremely dangerous. There were several torn papers on the table. There was a lot about the demon cult that Chan didn't know, and perhaps he should have been more careful. He remembered Yoren's words, saying that she had been rude to a high-ranking member of the holy demon cult. But Zhang couldn't stand it, and he hadn't been reborn to become someone's lapdog. Oh, if only that Hong Yoren hadn't come with her damn contract, I wouldn't have had to come here, he thought. His thoughts, echoing in his head alone, were interrupted by the girl's gentle voice. It was Hua who told him that they had been contacted by the Supreme Demon Palace and could prepare to leave. The carriage was waiting. If that was the case, then Zhang should at least see him, and he had no doubt about it. Taking a deep breath, he set off. The wooden wheels of the cart rattled on the road they were traveling, and after a while he arrived at the owner's house. Upon meeting him, he was informed that the Demon Lord had sent him to the Demon Pavilion of Justice. A moment later, he was looking at the gigantic mountains that towered before him, their footsteps covered in fog. What kind of place is this demonic Pavilion of Justice, he thought. What scared him even more was that the pavilion was located on top of a mountain, and right there the owner was waiting for him. The wine tasted even better than usual today. Sipping it sip by sip, he was lost in thought. Zhang was already approaching him down the long staircase. Looking around, he wondered what kind of place this was. It looked like some kind of demonic cult center. Even more alarming was the large number of guards around. It reminded him of the moment when he had been caught by the duo of the Righteous Heavenly Alliance and the Steel Blood Fortress, all of whom were probably high-ranked masters. This place was like the lair of dragons or tigers. One mistake could cost one's life. After going through this thorny path up the stairs, they finally found themselves in front of a door that was built right into the stone. Stopping in front of this door, the man who accompanied him said, "We are here. It's called the Demonic Pavilion of Justice, but it's not a pavilion at all," Zhang mused. But there was no time to tremble in fear. He had to act as if he knew everything, because even the slightest movement would determine his survival. The door opened and they waited for Zhang to enter. As he walked in step by step, he told himself, "Pull yourself together, Zhang Hajin. You are about to meet the Demon Lord." When he took a few steps forward, his surprise could not be concealed as a bright light fell on his face. A different world unfolded before him. Everything around him was in bloom, and the sun was shining much brighter than outside. He thought it was winter and everything was blooming like in summer. But no, it was more like spring, Zhang decided, looking at the deer drinking water from the stream. It was more like a dream, with birds sitting on the branches and basking in the sun. A bunny ran up to him from the side, and at that moment it seemed to Chun that he was in a dream. Maybe it's an illusion? He asked himself. Otherwise, he could not explain the fact that it was really winter outside. Zhang had always dreamed of leaving Gangho and finding peace in the green countryside, and this place was a dream come true for him. What a realistic technique of illusion, he thought as he approached the flowering trees. He gently touched the flowers on them and slowly fell into a nap, but suddenly woke up to a loud shout, "Come here!" He turned around sharply, exclaiming in fright, "Oh, you scared me." Next to him, he suddenly noticed a pavilion that hadn't been there a moment before. He was surprised because this place had appeared right before his eyes, and then he noticed a figure standing inside. Standing in front of him, with his back to him, with long braids that fell over his clothes with images of golden dragons, was the owner. Step by step, as if under hypnosis, Chan began to approach the pavilion. He was overcome with a strange feeling, as if his legs were moving on their own. He could not control them. They were confidently leading him straight to the pavilion. Inside the pavilion, he could hear the owner filling his glass with white wine, which was gurgling in the silence. Stepping forward, Zhang realized that he had been bewitched. "The first step is life. The second is death," the man said as he sipped his wine. He wondered if this was really how the third man imagined the demonic pavilion of justice. The third man's feet stopped right in front of the pavilion, which stood on the very edge of a cliff with an abyss behind it. The killer's instincts told him only one thing. It was dangerous. His gut feeling screamed at him about the threat that hung over him. Preparing for any eventuality, he clenched his fist tightly. He convinced himself that he could not retreat, because it was not in his character. If he really wanted to escape from the demonic cult and start a new life, he had to face the Demon Lord. As he climbed the stairs, he could only see the feet of this master in front of him. He asked himself, "Am I really going to meet him?" The ninth person, called the Heavenly Demon, is the great ninth Heavenly Demon. Step by step, he was getting closer and closer. Zhang tried to keep a serious expression on his face so as not to arouse any suspicion. His name was Li Zhongsang, and just by showing up, he was demonstrating that he was worthy of this place. His gaze was so piercing that everyone who met his eyes could ask themselves, "Am I worthy of life?" There were several other people standing in front of the entrance, silent and reserved. The Mudam and his servant stood nearby and asked if the third master had already entered. "Yes," they answered, and he asked if something was bothering him. In response, he heard only a silent silence hanging over the pavilion. After that, the servant apologized for having allowed himself to be overly indulged and bowed low before the first head of the guard. During the reign of the Demon Lord, only twice did outsiders enter the Demon Pavilion of Justice. The first incident occurred more than 25 years ago. It happened when the Demon Lord took his first disciple. The servant realized that the Mudam was hinting that he was the first disciple. However, this was not the case, and the Mudam explained that the first young master had become a disciple of the master exactly 20 years ago. This meant that there was another disciple before the first master. This unknown disciple, hiding in the shadows, died in the demonic pavilion of justice, torn to pieces as if torn by wild beasts. Mudam added that if the Lord wanted to kill him, he would not have invited him here. Then who was the other man who came in? The servant asked. The chief strategist, with a slight smile on his face, answered, "Him, an incredibly authoritative personality who took care of both small and large matters, the only man who had reached heights through intelligence, not martial arts. He was the second person to enter the demonic pavilion of justice." The servant began to sweat nervously as he told the story because he was so excited about it. "Yes, he entered with his head held high," the Mudam continued. "And today the demonic pavilion of justice opened its doors for the third time. I wonder if the third young master will manage to get out of there alive. What awaits him? What step will he take next?" Meanwhile, Li poured himself a third glass of wine. When Li Zhongsang saw the Demon Lord, he was immediately impressed. Here was a powerful master, the ruler of all things, whose aura of power could be felt even from a distance. There was no weakness in him, which only emphasized the illusory nature of this place. However, he emanated an incredible aura of power that emphasized his status as one of the 10 strongest martial artists. He was so powerful that he was considered semi-immortal, and he lived in a completely different dimension. When he saw him, Chan could not contain his surprise. He was frightened by the very presence of the master, whose aura made Chan slap his cheeks, trying to collect his thoughts. The master, having calmly poured the wine, continued to hold the cup in his hands. He held out the vessel of wine to Chan, offering him to take it. Chan bowed and thanked him for his generosity. The drink was so flavorful that he wondered when he had last had such a wonderful drink. The wine was like medicine for him, and he drank it in one gulp, enjoying every drop. At this point, Lee asked why Zhang wanted to meet him. Holding out a second glass of wine, he asked what the reason for the meeting was. Zhang noticed that the master did not like to beat around the bush, so he decided to get straight to the point and be frank. He directly stated his request without hiding his intentions. "What is your request?" the master asked, looking directly into Chan's eyes. Zhang put the second drink on the table and began to mutter quietly to himself. Chan wondered why he was hesitating, constantly reminding himself that he had once been one of the strongest martial artists. Finally, he decided to ask if there would be any problems if he left the cult. However, when he grabbed his head, he realized that he had said the wrong thing. He should have asked for permission to temporarily leave to rest and get some fresh air. So far, there was only silence in response. After a few seconds, the master asked, "Do you want to leave the cult?" Zhang opened his eyes wide, realizing that his honesty seemed to be working. The leader held out his vessel and asked Chan for more wine. He was so nervous that he felt like he was about to lose control. In addition, the master's face showed no emotion, which only added to the tension. However, Chan's request was so incomprehensible to the master that he asked him if he wanted to leave for a while or leave the cult forever. "Do you not like being my disciple?" the master asked. No, that's not what I meant at all." Zhang waved his hands, trying to explain his words. The next question from Lee was even harder. "Did you give up because your body was completely exhausted?" Chan could barely get a word in edgewise while Lee bombarded him with questions about his limits. Finally, Lee put his head down and said it was a big disappointment. Finally, Zhang was given the opportunity to speak and said that he had no intention of cutting ties with the cult. He just recently came to his senses and lost his fighting skills. He really wants to get back in shape, but it has proven to be more difficult than he expected. So Zhang decided that a change of scenery and fresh air could help him. The owner listened attentively to him without saying anything. This was exactly the request that Zhang had come with, and he thought that he might have offended the master with his words. But suddenly the master became angry and grabbed the wine cup with all his might. Zhang immediately wondered whether he should apologize or what to do. At this point, Lee asked if Zhang had only met with him to get permission to leave. Lowering his head, Zhang began to mumble under his breath, not explaining anything clearly. He was confused himself. Was this really the reason for meeting with the heavenly demon lord? Just to ask for permission to go out? Despite this, the lord continued to pour wine. Zhang reminded himself not to be distracted and to quickly think of a suitable excuse. Finally, it occurred to him, and he said that he just wanted to see the master because he hadn't seen him in a long time. These words were more pleasing to the master. It seemed that his reaction was not negative. Zhang continued, adding that even though he was in this state, he had responsibilities as a disciple, and he could never repay the master for even 1/100th of the good he had done for him. He tried to tap into Lee's emotions, hoping to move him. However, the master simply handed Zhang a bowl of wine. But as soon as Zhang took the bowl, it instantly crumbled into dust. At that moment, the master stood up and stood directly in front of Chan. "Wow, he's huge," thought Chan, looking down at him. The master began to explain that if he had known his responsibilities, he would not have appeared before him in such a miserable state. For a moment, Chan thought, did he realize that there is another soul in this body? Did he realize this because of his eyes, which were glowing with blue light? It seemed that the master saw through him, penetrated into his very soul, and Chan did not know what to say this time. When the master turned around, it seemed for a moment that Chan had escaped danger. The master walked to the edge of the cliff and began to look at the mansion located between the two mountains. He grabbed the beam with his hands, and dust began to fall from his palm. Zhang said he would return in 3 days, trying to understand how he would react. But he still did not understand whether the master had approved his request, or whether he was now forbidden to leave the place altogether. Zhang hesitated, not knowing if he was allowed to do what he had planned, and waited for the master to say something. But instead, the overlord only spoke. "The demonic pavilion of justice is under a clear sky and overlooking green fields. It's been a long time since I've seen such a view," he said, gazing into the distance. But the day was already over, and darkness reigned outside. Lee continued to pour wine, just as he had done during the day, because he always loved to drink. Every time he poured it, he said that it was a reward for his hard work. He would say these words to Mudam, who would thank him and say that he was honored. Mudam, sitting on his knees next to his master, knocked over a bowl of wine and drank it to the bottom. Then he asked what was happening to the third disciple. Mudam replied that he was recovering at his home. Lee wondered if that was all, or if there was any more news. While playing with his pet, which in Korean mythology was a huge sea serpent called an imugi, Lee noted that Jong looked good. According to legend, to become a real dragon, an imugi must live in the water for 1,000 years. Lee had picked up Chan 10 years ago, mistaking him for an imugi, and imagine his disappointment when he discovered that it was just a poisonous snake. But today, when he saw Chan, he noticed a magical pearl on his lips. Moving further and further away from evil, Chan nevertheless comes to understand death. The demonic pavilion of justice is the place where evil is judged. Those who are guilty are invited here by the demon lord, and it is he who holds court over them. The demonic pavilion of justice reflects the heart of the person who enters, as well as their conscious and subconscious state. If the Lord does not like the defendant, then on his orders, a formation will attack the person, and as soon as the defendant has the desire to kill, he will be destroyed in the most brutal way. The technique of formation is able to reveal the true intentions of the person entering. This is the highest level formation, and only a demon lord can break through it. Lee next asked Mudam if the secluded bamboo grove was well maintained, hearing the answer that the elder court staff had been ordered to watch over it daily, and that on average there were about 5 accidents a month. But no one had died in the past 4 months. Lee concentrated. He opened a small box and ordered the court of elders to temporarily recall their workers. Lee intended to send a 3rd disciple to a secluded bamboo grove. When Mudam heard this, he could not say anything, although his thoughts were full of anxiety. From the box that Lee was holding in his hands, he took out a small mouse. He placed this mouse as food for his animal. With a calm expression on his face, Lee watched everything that happened. Lee watched the blood of the mouse fly around in a calm manner. Mudam said, yes, it is to a secluded bamboo grove. He thought it was the best place for Jung to get some fresh air. In fact, this place was extremely interesting. It was home to 8 unusual creatures that made the place even more mysterious. Walking between the bamboo thickets, Chong could barely contain himself when a 2-headed chameleon suddenly sat on him. What is wrong with you? Why is everyone trying to destroy me? Thought Chan, trying to understand what was happening. He just wanted to spend time in a quiet place, away from the 4 black walls. But he was sent to the middle of nowhere. What did I do wrong to be sent to this creepy place and all alone? Thought Chong, feeling angry and indignant. Standing in the middle of the bamboo forest, he shouted at the top of his voice, Demon Lord, you are a bastard! If Lee thought that this was the perfect place to relax, then he really is a piece of shit. But as Jung was boiling with anger, an energy appeared behind him, and the person who appeared asked him to forgive him. The person explained that his remark about the great heavenly demon was unnecessary. He went on to explain that any rude or insulting remark against the demon lord is considered a serious offense that carries the death penalty. There are no exceptions, not even for high-ranking officials. However, Jung said that it was worth listening more carefully, and said that he did not speak maliciously about the demon lord. Oh, of course, it was just a misunderstanding, the guy replied sarcastically, apologizing. Chong thought that this guy was someone higher than even an emperor to these dark and sinister bastards of the demon cult. In fact, he was one of the elders. After that, he greeted Chan, and he explained that he was now Chong's humble servant, Ma Dongping, and he was honored to serve him as his bodyguard. He was also the 3rd leader of the Council of Elders of the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult. In fact, Chong didn't care about his honor. He just wanted him to stay away from him. At this point, Ma Dongping began to swear with his life that he would devote himself to protecting Chong and ensuring his safety. But Chong only wished that this guy would finally shut up. Some time passed, and Chong had to adjust to the new circumstances. He had many questions and doubts about his actions. He stood in the middle of the bamboo thicket, feeling hopelessly trapped, with only the palm trees around him to remind him of his despair. In the end, he was left all alone, and it wasn't just his red eyes that betrayed his sadness. The situation was much worse. He could not find any way out of this place. No matter how hard he tried, nothing worked. Sometimes he could not even hold back his tears of despair. He would beat his head against the bamboo and scream about how much he hated these demonic bastards. He just wanted to go for a walk, and they sent him to this hole. But Chan realized that it would not be easy for him, and no one had promised him an easy way out, so he decided not to waste his time on meaningless thoughts. It was at this point that he had an interesting thought. Why does he want to leave the cult at all? After he was in the body of the 3rd young master of the demonic cult, he had a bad feeling. But he told himself that one day he would escape from here. But now it is impossible, so he will have to wear the skin of the 3rd young master for some time. In order to survive in this body, he needs strength, and he simply has to become stronger. The ideology of survival of the fittest finds more support in the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult than in other Murim groups. He cannot just sit back and wait to be recognized as untalented and thrown out. Ultimately, he would have to take the path of martial arts, regardless of whether it brought him life or death. And he was not going to fall for dirty tricks anymore, deciding to walk with his head held high from now on. Ma Dongping was watching him from behind the bamboo thickets. But at that moment, Chong accidentally saw him and was very frightened. Ma Dongping only came to say that the food was ready and asked Chong to come over. Chong asked Ma again not to touch him, repeating what he had said before. However, Ma emphasized that they had already been here for 2 days, and in that time Chong had not even taken a single sip of water. He then asked Chong why he always appeared so suddenly, like a devil out of a snuff box. Yes, master, Ma replied, and Chong thought that this guy seemed to be really impenetrable. Time seemed to pass in this place in a hurry, and 3 days after entering the lonely bamboo grove. To begin with, Chong used the infinity technique to strengthen his body and soul. Meditation was an integral part of this process. The circulation of qi from the infinity technique was different this time. Is this really the level of circulation at the 3rd power level? Thought Chong. In general, there are 5 levels of the infinity technique. In his previous life as an assassin king, he had reached the pinnacle of the 4th stage of power. The unity of martial skills and physical condition of the body is more important than achieving enlightenment. And yet, even this weakened body, which has experienced qi blockage, is at the top of the 3rd stage of power, literally on the verge of moving to the 4th. Perhaps this guy is really a genius. In addition, the purification technique was automatically activated. It purifies the air around you by absorbing turbid qi from the surrounding space. As a result, the air around me became clean, and the turbid qi turned into a part of the mastered power, thanks to the infinity technique. The purification of the air greatly increased his ability to assimilate power, which greatly accelerated his progress through the power levels. This meant only one thing. He would be able to return to his previous level of power much faster than he had expected. He could feel it in every cell of his body. At that moment, Chong realized that he was ready to take it to the next level, to go to the 4th stage of power. It was then, during meditation, that an explosion of blue flame, which was qi energy, came from him, and the rays soared straight into the sky. 5 days after entering the lonely bamboo grove, everything was ready. His body was completely restored. The damaged blood vessels and important organs became much healthier, making life in the grove easier than he had expected. Even his hair became darker. In addition, he ate to his heart's content because Ma had solved all the food issues. Sleep was also an integral part of his recovery, and he loved to sleep while Ma Dongping was out doing things. And now he could finally use the abilities he had in his previous life. In his previous life as an assassin king, he had developed a heightened sensitivity. Frequent encounters with death and the experience of a hired killer had left their mark, and the martial arts that enhanced this heightened sensitivity became his main weapon. This is nothing more than the technique of the 6 powers of the heavenly grid. The first form is the all-seeing gaze, a martial art that increases the sensitivity of the 5 senses to the maximum, making them even more acute than those of predators. A complete overview of space without even needing to turn your head. Chong liked this very much, but he knew that he had achieved it through his own efforts. But at the same time, he hated himself for getting used to this place so quickly. Once again, Ma appeared from behind the bamboo and addressed the young master. He came again to tell him that the food was ready, and again scared Chong, who was sure that Ma was deliberately choosing moments to appear unexpectedly. Sometimes it even seemed to Chong that Ma was pretending to be an idiot to mock him. The demon monsters became more active after sunset, which is why Ma said it was time to go back. They finally went home, and Chong was able to lay the foundation. The foundation needed to properly develop his fighting skills. If he combines the knowledge from his past life with the abilities of this body, he will quickly become strong again. Ma Dongping walked behind Chong, closed his eyes, and began to feel something. Among the bamboos, he sensed some suspicious energy. Could it be a ghost? He wondered, scanning everything around him. Thanks to the infinity technique, Chong almost completely recovered, regaining his strength and energy, which seemed to have been lost. He came up with an interesting idea to try to take off into the sky, testing his new abilities. When he jumped up, he managed to fully recover 2 of his skills, and unexpectedly, he began to fly. The boundless technique restored his body, and the 6 heavenly powers technique restored all his senses, bringing him to perfection. He flew extremely fast, kicking off from each bamboo tree, but he already had another important matter to solve in his mind. The dark qi energy, created by combining the hidden techniques of the 10 great sects, needed special attention. These 3 martial skills became the foundation of the art that made him a legend and the king of assassins, Zhang Hajin. With these abilities, he could become strong again in a matter of moments, restoring his former power. While flying through the bamboo treetops, he had another brilliant idea. What if he could study the dark shadow of qi? The divine cult of the celestial demon, where he was the 3rd young master of Soryang, might have the necessary knowledge. Although he was no Zhang Hajin, it was certain that some kind of art of the celestial demon cult was definitely left, and he wondered what kind of art it was. He came up with an idea, but he needed to contact Dongpil immediately. As soon as he said his name, he immediately appeared, asking what questions he had. Zhang asked if there were any of his brothers who had not mastered the art of the heavenly demon cult, or perhaps had mastered some other martial art that was not demonic. Dongpil, not quite understanding the question, apologized because it seemed impossible for him to answer such a question. He continued to ask what would happen if he refused to learn the art of the heavenly demon cult. Dongpil replied that he wanted to know, but he could only assume that if young masters and mistresses did not learn this art, the consequences could be serious. The master would no doubt be very unhappy with this development. After that, Zhang approached him again with a new task. He ordered Dongpil to go to the library immediately. At the library, he was to report that he had arrived with the permission of the third young master. Dongpil was also given the task of finding and bringing back all the secret manuscripts about the art of the heavenly demon cult that he could find. Chan had an interesting idea, and he decided to act immediately. A short time later, Dongpil was in the library, fulfilling his task. He sat in front of the Mudan, insistently asking him for the secret manuscripts, explaining that it was a request from the third young master. The Mudan was intrigued as to why the third young master needed these manuscripts, since he was supposed to know them all. Perhaps it was an attempt to stimulate himself. After apologizing in advance, Dongpil asked the Mudan a rude question that had been tormenting him for a long time. As a bodyguard, he had to know the target he was charged with protecting, so he was so direct, even at the risk of being disrespectful. Afterward, he asked if it was possible that the third young master had lost his memory after encountering the chi blocking. Mudan could not say with certainty what had actually happened, leaving the question unanswered. Mudan could only recall the past, where the third young master was incredibly talented, but equally greedy and arrogant. He was a real tyrant, for whom people of lower rank were nothing more than dust under his feet. However, after he returned from the chi blockade, he seemed to become a completely different person. Yunhua also noticed that he was not the same as before. Sometimes his words and actions were distracted, as if he was in his own thoughts. In addition, he had managed to escape the demonic pavilion of justice alive, which was a miracle in itself. All these facts made Mudan think deeply about the situation. On reflection, he told Dongpil that he understood his concern, but not to worry. The person he was serving was not just anyone, but one of the family members who might become the heirs to the cult in the future. Who knows if he really lost his memories, but that was the end of the matter, the Mudan explained. This was one of the few reasons why it was so difficult to protect the heirs, and that was why the Mudan had chosen Dongpil. The Mudan then handed him the key and asked him to take it. He reminded them that they had 3 days and asked them to mix this key with the other tests and take 4 secret manuscripts. However, the Mudan had one more question he wanted to ask the boy. He asked if Dongpil had told the young master about the secluded bamboo grove. Dongpil replied that he hadn't yet, but he planned to do so today. Mudan, in turn, asked if Dongpil knew how dangerous it was and asked him to make sure the young master was safe. His task was extremely important, and although the bamboo grove was a dangerous place, Dongpil was ready to do everything to avoid making any mistakes. Mudan wondered what the demon lord saw in the third young master that made him decide to send him to the secluded bamboo grove. The secluded bamboo grove was a demonic forest that existed before the heavenly divine cult and stretched over hundreds of thousands of mountains. The killer who had killed many demons over 1,000 years during the reign of the most powerful first celestial demon played a key role in the formation of the divine cult. At the time, the cult did not have much power, and it was this grove that helped it become one of the greatest sects. For some, this grove is a huge gift, incredibly valuable and desirable. For others, it is a curse that brings only horror and despair. For the second time, the master put the third young master to the test, allowing him to leave the demonic pavilion of justice. Mudan stood there, gazing into the distance, and pondered this. He was extremely curious about what would happen in the secluded bamboo grove, and this question haunted him. Meanwhile, in the lonely bamboo grove itself, Chan stared in astonishment, hardly believing his eyes, and began to count. 1, 2, 4, 17. There were so many books in front of him that he couldn't even count them, asking himself why he had been brought so many. Dongpil replied that it was not much, and he had chosen only the most important ones. Zhang, clutching his head, asked, "You call that a little?" There was so much information that it seemed like he could absorb it endlessly. However, he realized that if he considered the art of the celestial demon cult inferior to the art of the Celestial Alliance, he would never be able to understand its true nature. In this matter, one could not be prejudiced. Dongpil also said that out of the 17 texts, 3 were to be returned in 3 days. 3 days? Why 3 days? Asked Zhang. Dongpil explained that these 3 books describe the 10 great demonic arts, which are the secret texts of their school. And as Zhang should already know, they are only available to the first, second, and third young masters. At the same moment, Dongpil realized that the 10 great demonic arts are the highest level arts in the heavenly demon cult. If the third young master successfully mastered at least one of them, he would be able to look down on the world. This is a demonic art that everyone in the divine cult knows about, even if he doesn't remember it. Zhang immediately noticed that Dongpil was thinking and asked him why he was looking at him like that. Dongpil lowered his head and apologized again for being disrespectful by looking at his master like that. He then asked if Chan really didn't remember any of these secret techniques. Chang slammed his hand down on the table, started to rise, and explained that, as he already knew, he had completely lost his martial skill after the chi block. Then he grabbed his head, admitting that his mind and heart were no longer what they used to be. In truth, it was as if they were both exiled to a secluded bamboo grove. With a sad expression on his face, Zhang repeated that he had to do something, but he felt completely hopeless. He admitted that he needed to relearn the demon art he had forgotten and begged Dongpil to help him. Zhang called Dongpil his last hope, and if he had to practice, asked him to bring the cult's weapons at dawn. Listening to the sincerity that echoed from the third master, Dongpil could not help but feel tears and snot flowing and his lips trembling from this sincerity. He asked himself questions. What the hell, why am I crying? More serious than ever before, Dongpil said he was ready to put his life in Zhang's service. At the same time, Zhang could not understand what was happening and was mentally begging him to stop because it was too much. Dongpil would occasionally approach the corral and look at the animals using his senses. He realized that they would become stronger and more active in 10 days. For now, he didn't notice any dangerous movements and was sure that everything was going smoothly. They were now in the safest area of the bamboo grove. Meanwhile, Zhang sat and carefully studied each book, trying not to miss any important details. Dongpil could see him through the window and reflected on the fact that the young master was completely immersed in the study of secret manuscripts. He decided not to disturb him, so that nothing would distract him from his concentration. Dongpil understood his task, to bring the weapon requested by his master as soon as possible. Zhang read many books, sometimes even falling asleep over them, and was so exhausted by this process. Although not widely known, Zhang Hajin's Dark Shadow Qi was one of the greatest techniques in the Murim world. It may not have been comparable to the secret techniques of the 10 great sects in terms of depth and purity, but the Dark Shadow Qi was definitely one of the best of its time. Demonic art, however, was quite different, placing destruction above purity. It focused on instant results rather than stability, more on attack than defense, on true power than flexibility. And yet, the methods of the demonic arts had much in common with those of professional killers. Reading these books gave Chan a lot to think about. They were undoubtedly incredible martial arts, but he couldn't master them all right now because he wasn't in the best shape. Still, he wondered what he could do to improve his Dark Shadow Qi using these 10 great demonic arts. Deciding to get a book on the true demonic arts specifically, he thought it might work. The true demonic art is one of the major demonic arts, along with the demonic burning art, which is the foundation of demonic techniques. The true demon art was much more advanced than some of the 10 great demon arts. But he hesitated whether to continue reading the book or try to feel his feelings first. In the end, he decided to go with the second option. The limitless technique worked well when a person had many thoughts. He even managed to feel someone's presence. He assumed it was Dongpil who was back and watching him. It crossed his mind that he should be more careful, because even though Dongpil seemed naive, he continued to watch his every move. Having had a great workout, Zhang decided that he was done for the day and started to get up. However, he had a strange feeling that the ground beneath him was moving. Is that Dongpil doing something down there? Thought Zhang, turning his head and asking, Are you back already? But the eyes he saw did not belong to Dongpil at all, and the creature did not have a beak either. What the hell is this? Zhang asked himself as he looked at the monster in front of him. The creature immediately began to approach him. It was so fast that it knocked the guy down with one attack. It even broke through the fence made of strong bamboo, smashing it into pieces. It was extremely dangerous. What the hell is going on here? Thought Zhang. The creature broke through the palisade, and a silhouette with 3 heads could be seen in the dust. The creature was truly terrifying. It was gigantic, shaped like a huge rooster, but with 3 heads. It had 4 legs and giant claws at the ends. Its wings were the size of a man. The 3 heads added even more horror and incomprehension, and the creature screamed like an old, broken gramophone. What the hell is this? Thought Zhang. This monstrosity looked like a mutant of the great King Yanglo, completely unnatural and frightening. It was obviously crazy what was going on in this area, making him doubt the reality of what was happening. Before he could even blink, the bird attacked again. It was incredibly fast. Only his agility saved him, and he managed to dodge at the last moment. But the creature swooped right over him, so fast that his clothes were unbuttoned by the strong gust. Rising from the ground, Zhang watched as the creature rose into the air directly above him. Its size increased, and now it had 6 legs. Its scream was like a sonic martial art. So powerful and piercing was it. The sound wave from her squeak was so strong that it almost knocked Chan off his feet. Meanwhile, Dongpil walked with his swords on his back, which he was clattering as he headed toward the hut. He believed that he had enough of the weapons he had gathered, as there were different types of weapons, including swords. Along the way, he reflected that the third young master had always used swords, and as a swordsman, he must have been skilled enough to create his own style. Who knows, maybe the memories would come back to him when he picked up a sword again. However, judging by how cruel he had been before, Dongpil was not sure whether to help bring his memory back. In the past, the third young master had constantly humiliated Dongpil, causing him problems even over food that seemed inedible to Zhang, but was actually normal. He hoped with all his heart that those times would not return. Dongpil wished that the old third master would never return, but then he firmly told himself, enough is enough. After all, he was just the young master's bodyguard, and shouldn't be emotional. Dongpil stopped when he smelled a pungent odor that suddenly filled the air. It was a strong smell of blood that could not be ignored. And then he heard a loud cry, like a rooster crowing, coming from nearby. At this time, Chan fought with all his might against this creature, not thinking of escaping. He tried to hit it with his hands, but the rooster did not give him the slightest chance because of its aggressive cries. After one of the hand strikes, the rooster managed to grab Chan's arm with its sharp paws. 3 heads were already ready to grab his neck, and the paws were lifting Chan up, trying to pull him off the ground. "You're fucking crazy!" screamed Chan loudly, barely breaking free, and hit the creature on the head. But he only hit one of the 3 heads, which only made the rooster make even more distinctive angry noises. This enraged the creature even more, and it began to scream even louder. Zhang tried to find a support to resist the strong wind that rose from the rooster's wings and stop this sonic attack. What kind of rooster is this? What kind of rooster uses sound art, he thought, trying to understand what he was dealing with. And it's so damn strong, it's some kind of incredible mutated cock! It's going to be hard, damn it. If only I had a weapon, it would be much easier, he thought, wishing he did. He asked himself, what can I use as a weapon? There was a piece of fence on the ground in front of Chan that seemed to be useful for fighting back. The rooster, crowing loudly, came closer and closer, not leaving even a moment to think. However, Chan was not about to fall into the same trap a second time. He grabbed his stick like a bolt from the blue, jumped high into the air, and was ready to turn his future opponent into a kebab. The rooster began to crow with all 3 heads from the strong blow that Chan dealt him. The bamboo stick saved Chan, allowing him to strike directly at the creature's back. But it was only an illusion, because the stick shattered into pieces when it hit the rooster's strong back. Is it dead or not? Wondered Zhang, sitting on the rooster's back and trying to figure out if he had managed to defeat this monster. But the rooster's eyes remained open. At that moment, Zhang realized that the rooster was still alive. Reacting quickly, Chan flew off its back. The enraged rooster threw him off with such force that Zhang slammed his body into the bamboo fence. The impact was so strong that all the bamboo posts on the back of the fence cracked. After hitting his back against the fence, Chan gradually slid down and sat on the ground, exhausted. The rooster kept crowing louder and louder. It really hurts, said Chong, holding his shoulder and calling the rooster a stupid chicken. He now realized that he could not break through its feathers with physical strength alone. Although he never thought he would have to use this technique against an animal, there was nothing else to do. As the rooster got closer and closer, Chan realized that he had no other choice but to try a new strategy. So when the rooster came almost close, Zhang shouted to it, "Attack!" At that moment, he himself used the 6 heavenly powers technique. The second form of this technique, hypervision, allowed for a significant acceleration of the thought process due to Chai energy. This in turn seemed to slow down the world in his eyes. Running closer, Zhang noticed the rooster's weakest point. Jumping on it with another bamboo stick he had grabbed, Chan screamed, "That's it! You're dead!" And he began to strike right at the place where the rooster's heart was. The stick did not go easily through its skin, but Zhang applied more and more force, even starting to twist it to go even deeper. Now this cock won't wake anyone up in the morning anymore and won't be annoying like a broken alarm clock, Zhang thought. After a while, Dongpil burst into the hut where they were staying and saw that everything around them was destroyed. He held his sword in his hand and was ready to help the young master. Covered in the blood of a rooster, Zhang sat on a rock and said sarcastically, "You've finally returned." Dongpil, worried, ran up to Zhang and asked if he was okay. "What are you fussing about?" he asked back. Dongpil looked at the corpse of a rooster with 3 heads covered in blood and said in horror, "This is the Heavenly Lotus." That was the name of the chicken, Dongpil explained, adding that this was not the time for talk, but rather for treating Zhang's wounds. Zhang looked at his body, at his dirty clothes, and said calmly, "This blood is not mine." And it was true. Apart from a few scratches, there were almost no serious wounds on the young master's body, even though Azure Lotus was as dangerous as a leopard. Dongpil asked if Zhang had fought the beast himself. Chan looked around, noting that no one else was here but him, and curiously asked if there was a large cauldron. When Dongpil told him that there was, Zhang asked him to fill it with water, add bamboo shoots, and bring it to a boil because he was going to cook dinner for them tonight. But that was not the end of it. Holding the bamboo stick, which was covered in blood, right up to Dongpil's face, Zhang said he wanted an explanation. He demanded to know how Dongpil knew about this bird, what this secluded bamboo grove was, and why he didn't know about it himself. Dongpil began to explain that the secluded bamboo grove existed before the creation of the heavenly demon cult. Compared to other known mountains, it has the densest spiritual qi energy, which circulates only in this grove. This place is special because the dense spiritual energy of qi spreads throughout the region, but is concentrated only in the bamboo grove, and its concentration only increases over time. Qi saturates the trees and soil, making them especially strong and thick. The bamboo sprouts grow much faster than nature intended, which helps to preserve the grove. In addition, some plants become thicker and stronger and acquire strange properties. They can become both poison and elixir, as the spiritual energy inside them is very dense. In order for the beneficial properties of these herbs to be absorbed by the human body, they need to be processed for dozens of cycles. More than half of the demonic elixirs created by the cult are made from bamboo harvested right here. Unfortunately, mass production of elixirs is not possible here. Most of the bamboo that has medical value grows deep in the bowl, but the problem is the spiritual beasts that live there. One of these beasts was this giant rooster, which Chan had already boiled and made into delicious meat. However, the azure lotus was the weakest among them. Moreover, some of the mid-level beasts are as strong as the top-level masters. The latter come to the forest twice a year to harvest divine bamboo together with the first keeper and other high-ranking masters. But even for them, the bowl of a secluded bamboo grove is extremely dangerous. The bamboo fortress is considered the safest place in the secluded bamboo grove. In telling all this, Dongpil added that he had no idea it was time for the azure lotus to wander, and apologized for not being able to protect Chan because of his amateurism. He not only built a palisade around the bamboo fortress, but also added an octagonal wall to the outside. Dongpil had done more than enough to fulfill his duties, according to the third master, and he told him so, asking him not to worry. After that, Zhang handed Dongpil a bowl of soup that contained a rooster thigh that didn't even fit in the bowl. To think he cooked this monster and is going to eat it, Dongpil thought. Is this even edible? He wondered, looking into the bowl. But he soon stopped doubting and started to eat. A few seconds after he had eaten everything, he was already asking the young man for another portion. From everything that had been said, Zhang realized that this place was indeed very dangerous, and he had been sent here by the demon lord Li Zhongsang. Thinking about this, Zhang came to the conclusion that he had to master the demonic arts as soon as possible. Pouring himself a portion of food, Zhang brought up the fact that the octagonal wall created by Dongpil turned out very well, even though it was not properly constructed, but it was very functional. The third recognized Dongpil's work because there was nothing to recognize. It was a fact. Dongpil began to realize that Zhang had studied formations before. Formations are the same as martial arts. They can't be learned from books alone. The third man seemed like an incredible person, and the more he got to know him, the more questions he had for Zhang. Zhang finished reading more than 10 secret manuscripts on the demonic arts in just 3 days. He easily defeated the azure lotus, although he did not fully recover. He may seem frivolous and reckless, but when he is serious, he gives off an aura that is difficult to get close to. Moreover, he was not very upset when he lost his martial skill due to qi blocking. After weighing all of these facts, Dongpil decided that there was undoubtedly something he didn't know yet. He decided to learn the demonic art, but he had to hurry because it was his first time learning it. If he wants to become stronger in the near future, he can't give up the familiar Dark Shadow Qi. Dark Shadow Qi is a martial art that he created by combining 10 secret techniques of great sects. The true demonic art, on the other hand, is the foundation of everything, and depending on how he masters it, the nature, character, and quality of his qi will change. What if he can eliminate the shortcomings of the Dark Shadow Qi through the true demon arts, thought Chang. It seems that a drop of ink can turn clear water black. A demonic art like this ink, especially a true demonic art, which is the ancestor of all demonic arts in the divine heavenly demon cult. There is nothing more suitable for the development of the dark shadow of Qi created recently. Perhaps it was fate that Zhang appeared in the divine cult of the heavenly demon with his dark Qi shadow. And now is the time to begin. True demonic art and the dark shadow of Qi. Chang wondered if it was possible to combine the basics of demonic cult and the secret techniques of the 10 great sects into a single whole. While Zhang was training tirelessly, Dongpil was cleaning the yard. But he couldn't help but think that 12 days had passed since the third man had locked himself in his room and ordered him not to be disturbed. Curiosity got the better of him, and Dongpil kept wondering what Zhang was doing there. Meanwhile, Zhang was meditating. They say opposites attract, and it turned out to be true. He realized a new martial art. It was more destructive than the dark shadow of Qi and more stable than the true demonic art. Opening his eyes after meditation, Chong felt that everything was ready. He was the first to feel the demonic energy coursing through his body. He had never experienced anything like it. A strong wind rose up outside because of the powerful energy that was flowing inside the building. Dongpil felt the sudden influx of demonic energy. Zhang decided that the new martial art would be called the Dark Shadow Demonic Art. The bamboo grove was hiding terrible monsters. One of them was approaching their fortress, but Dongpil cut down this giant gorilla with a single sword stroke. However, he did not cook it, deciding to leave it as it was. It was not an easy walk for him, but he was extremely strong. After a while, when they decided to take a walk, Dongpil had no strength left in his legs. He suggested that today it would be wise to retreat to the bamboo fortress. The third man said that he had heard that the Xingxing was a herd animal. The Xingxing is an amazing Chinese creature that looks like a dog, a pig, or a monkey, but with a human face. They are like a mama's boy in character. Real interesting guys. They killed only 3, but Chan realized that this was not enough for the whole pack. A sudden sound cut through Dongpil's ears and he screamed, warning of danger. It was a flock of Sinkins rushing at them, breaking even the bamboo in their path. There were so many of them, and Dongpil insisted that they should retreat, begging the third to do so. But Zhang calmly replied, "Relax." Even though he realized that Dongpil was right, he had been fighting the monsters all day, and his internal energy was almost at 0. However, there was no time to waste. He needed to hone his new technique to get out of here as soon as possible. He was about to cross his limit. His eyes glowed red and he said to himself, "I will become strong. Dark Shadow Demonic Art." As he spoke these words, his sword became energized, and he was ready to fight even the pack. Meanwhile, at the demonic cult's mansion, Li, reading the report on the third, could not believe that the third young master was hunting flocks of azure lotuses and Xingxing in a secluded bamboo grove. The master was very interested in this, but he knew that if the third one killed the black dragon, it would be difficult for him to escape the terrible cries of the beasts. The master then brought up the subject of the techniques he was studying, and the Mudan listened attentively. The master explained that the blood flame was too sharp and the heaven grab was too heavy, neither of which were suitable. The red phoenix might be better, but if he had good eyesight, he wouldn't have mastered it. After weighing all these factors, Li assumed that the Mudan had given the third man 3 secret manuscripts on the demonic arts. He confirmed that this was the case. They were Blood Flame, Seizing Heaven, and Red Phoenix. Li believed that it would be difficult to handle the Red Phoenix in this state, as it could become a poison to the body after blocking the Qi. He also assumed that the third one was proficient in other demonic arts, and asked the Mudan if he had given him any secret manuscripts from the secret library. The Mudan fell low to the floor and began to apologize to the Lord, saying that he had entered the secret library without his permission, and asked him to punish him. Li asked him to get up and reminded him that he had the right to access the secret library. However, the Mudan felt guilty for not informing the Lord about it. The master asked him if he regretted giving the third young master access to the secret library. Mudan realized that he should not regret it, and he was ready to take full responsibility for his actions. In the end, the owner ended the dialogue by expressing respect for the Mudan's decision. Mom's doters gaped at what was happening in front of them. They saw Zhang jumping up, holding a sword. Meanwhile, in the Lord's caroms, a drink was being poured into a vessel. And Zhang continued to fight against the monsters, scattering them in all directions with his sword. Li asks the Mudan if he knows why a child's fight is more terrible than an adult's. The answer was simple: because children don't know when to stop. That is why it is frightening. They believe that honor is honor no matter what. When a child realizes where the line between life and death lies in an armed battle, with pure ignorance, then he becomes a man. Until he realizes this, he remains a child. Ma Dongpil did his best to help his master as effectively as possible. Suddenly he heard the words, "Mr. Ma, beware!" And Zhang shouted. A swift and strong attack was coming at him. It was the attack of 3 Xingxing, which flew at him at high speed, making loud roars. The young master reminded his bodyguard to remain vigilant. After all, these Xingxin were trying to overwhelm them in numbers. Continuously using the demonic art of dark shadow was dangerous, but at this rate, Chong could try to reach the heart of the grove. But at one point he noticed a very fast monster. Mr. Ma did not have time to dodge the hoof attack. The blow was so hard that it cut his eyebrow and he flew backwards. What the hell? Where did he come from? Thought Zhang. In front of him he saw a horse in tiger coloring. It had big fangs, which immediately made it clear to Chan that this beast was not to be underestimated, like that chicken. Dongpil was constantly fighting these vermin. Over the past few days, he had mastered his strength quite well, but this monster still put him down with a single blow. This thing was much stronger than anything that Zhang and his bodyguard had encountered here before. Looking into the snake's eyes, all they wanted to do was run away. But running away was not an option for Chan. He decided that he had to use all his strength from the start. As soon as he closed his eyes and began to concentrate, he felt a strong push into his body. The forehead of this monster. The blow was of incredible strength, such that he was thrown back several dozen meters, knocking down all the bamboos on his way. The sword slipped from his hands and spun in the air as he flew backwards, unable to hold it in his hands. This meant that the previous attack was not at maximum speed. It meant he had to try again, and he wasn't going to let himself be fooled twice. But as soon as he tried to do so, a very unpleasant problem appeared. He couldn't move his body. "Oh shit," he thought, looking at his right arm. He noticed that it was broken, and it was only because of the shock that he did not immediately feel this severe pain. Meanwhile, he could only hear the hoofbeats of the horse. If it continued like this, he would not be able to land a single blow. Just when I thought everything was going according to plan, this happens, Zhang thought with disappointment. In this forest, you couldn't let your guard down even for a second. And at that moment, a sword flew through the air like a spear. It slammed into the horse's mane and bounced off. "Hey monster, come here! Your enemy is here!" Donpil shouted bravely, trying to draw the horse's attention to him. The horse turned its head to the other side and started looking at Dongpil, thus drawing its attention away from Zhang. As Chan tried to set his broken arm, he realized that Donpil would not be able to do it alone. But Dongpil kept going and addressing the horse told it to come closer. It seemed that he was confident in his abilities and was inviting the horse to end the fight while exhaling air from his mouth. He exhaled to inhale sharply, turn around and start running away from the horse. The horse was foaming at the mouth like a madman and running after him. Along a path in the bamboo forest, it was stepping on Donpil's heels, chasing him. Donpil saw a slightly more open place without bamboo and immediately headed in that direction. There was a surprise waiting for the horse, prepared in advance by Donpil. And just before this surprise, he jumped up to jump over it, and the horse suddenly stopped feeling support under his front legs. The bamboo cracked and broke under the horse's hooves in the place where it stepped, because there was a large pit underneath. At the bottom of this pit was a trap in the form of sharp bamboo stakes, on which the horse fell, piercing its body. As Donpil got closer, he looked down to make sure it was dead, but it wasn't that simple. The stallion's eye was still open. Making characteristic sounds, she jumped up and began to desperately try to get out of the hole. Surprisingly, she didn't even pay attention to the fact that her body was pierced, a resilient freak. But because it dared to injure its master's precious body, Donpil decided that he had to punish it by cutting off its head. The monster continued to kick, bamboo flying around from its rapid movements, and it seemed that it had almost managed to get out of the pit. Seeing that half of its body was already on the surface, Donpil decided to postpone the beheading and stepped on its heels to try to stop it. 8 months later, Heavenly Demon Divine Cult, Court of Elders. The first head of the Court of Elders, Li Gongsan, scratched the head on the back of his head and said that it was quite difficult. The second head of the Elder Court, Ji Yan, replied that it was a great job. They discussed the issue of replacing the guards, but decided that it was not worth it, because the object of protection might be uncomfortable. As for why the patriarch of the Demon Sword family decided to show up today, they had no idea. Li merely remarked that he was not an important person. Perhaps he wanted to discuss something with the cult leader. He also mentioned that he had heard a rumor that they were trying to make the eldest son of the Demon Sword family one of the Demon Lord's disciples. Li noted that this may not be true, but given that 2 of his disciples are already from 7 families, it is quite likely. In terms of loyalty, there is no family more prominent than the Demon Sword family. After that, he emphasized that since they trusted this family so much, they should consider a special approach, because they are considered one of the strongest in the cult, with decent troops. But will the master accept another disciple if he already has 7? No one knows. It all depends on the decision of the master. In this dialogue, they came to the conclusion that most likely the number of disciples would remain the same. Ji Yan was referring to the 3rd young master. After experiencing a chi blockage, he lost his martial skill and is now in a lonely bamboo grove. It is not an exaggeration to say that he is very far from victory. It's a dangerous situation, the first head of the Elders' Court admitted. The second continued that he already knew that the bamboo grove was an extremely dangerous place. After all, they don't even know when the 3rd young master will return. And if the Lord doesn't give permission, he might be locked in there forever, he added. Li slammed his glass down and said, "That's enough." He asked Ji Yan to stop immediately, because if someone heard this conversation, it could end badly. Li explained that this was why they sent the 3rd chapter there. Among all of them, he was the best prepared for the lonely bamboo grove, and he was sent there on the orders of the Elders' Court master. However, their conversation was interrupted by a voice outside the door. The servant said that the 3rd head had come to meet them. "Dongpil is here," they said, and ordered him to be invited in immediately. The 3rd head, Ma Dongpil, greeted them as he entered the room. The 1st and 2nd heads were stunned by what they saw and did not understand what had happened. What is this sinister desire to kill? They thought. They couldn't recognize the third chapter, Donpil. He was radiating such a strong bloodlust that it was impossible to hide. What the hell has happened in the lonely bamboo grove in the last 8 months? They asked themselves as they looked at him. The first head handed Donpil some herbs, for which he thanked him. But Donpil asked why he needed the coniferous cave tea leaves. The first head explained that he was simply fulfilling the order of the young master, who had told him to bring the leaves. They noticed his diligence. Dongpil explained that the harder he worked, the better off the young master would be, and added that he had to be patient. The second and first heads offered him a drink and a chat, but Dongpil politely declined, apologizing. It couldn't be helped if he was busy, they realized. They believed he was doing a good job and wished him to be more careful. Donpil also wished them to take care, turned around and left. Both heads felt the same way. The bloodlust radiating from Dongpil was unnatural. Lee expressed his belief that it only showed that the third one was living in extreme conditions. They were sorry, but they were glad that he at least looked healthy. However, this was the third chapter they knew, and they were sure he would come back much stronger. That's what they believed. Meanwhile, Dongpil was moving through the forest much faster, jumping from one bamboo tree to another. The lightness he felt amazed him. He was much better than he was 8 months ago. The grueling experience in the lonely bamboo grove had taken his skills to a new level. Suddenly, he sensed something along the way. Specifically, he felt something moving nearby, so he stopped and became even more vigilant. What kind of beast is that? He thought as he looked ahead at the long bamboo trees, but he couldn't see anything. However, he could feel that the footsteps were heavy and measured. It was definitely not a shinsen. He reached for his sword because he began to feel something approaching. He planned to cut it down as soon as it got closer. Immersed in full concentration, he waited. It was supposed to be here at any moment. However, something went wrong. A young master appeared in front of him, whom Dongpil did not expect to see so soon. Zhang had already returned, although he had told him that he could take his time and talk to his friends. Dongpil thought that the young master would stay in the city's bamboo garden while he was gone. But during this time, Zhang managed to catch another Lucia, explaining that it was a creature from Chinese mythology. He got bored, so he went outside and saw Donpil wandering around. He couldn't let him leave after the last battle, which still left him tense. "And yes, we'll have horse for dinner," Zhang said. He then asked Dongpil to wash the pots as soon as they got home. Dongpil wanted to remove the splint from Zhang's right arm because it looked like it was completely healed. But Zhang kept his arm in his sleeve, complaining that it hurt, and he couldn't do anything. He couldn't even make his bed or feed himself, and when he went to the toilet, he would shout from there that his arm was in a cast and ask for various small services. It was already dark outside, and Zhang was sitting deep in meditation while Dongpil was washing the dishes. His meditation was on a completely different level than before. Who would have thought that he would defeat the Lucia by himself? No one would even believe that he survived the chi blockage. This place was full of creatures that even the best masters couldn't defeat, and Dongpil simply couldn't believe that the young master was dealing with such creatures on his own. He kept telling himself that he had to help the young master. After a while, when Dongpil was tired of waiting for the master to meditate, he came up behind him and, strangely enough, frightened him again with his sudden appearance. "What do you want to say this time?" asked Chan angrily. "Young master, I know you are strong, but you promised me not to go to dangerous places alone," Dongpil replied. Zhang scratched his head and asked, "What should I do then? Time is running out." Dongpil did not understand what he was talking about. Then the young owner began to explain that this place was dangerous now, and to be more precise, it would become dangerous. It all sounded rather mysterious, and Dongpil still didn't understand what he was talking about, but Zhang continued to tell him. "A high concentration of spiritual qi not only produces bamboo and creates monsters, but also changes people's bodies," said Zhang. "Although we put in a lot of effort, under normal conditions, this result cannot be achieved in 8 months. That's why this place is dangerous, and the damage from staying here can be fatal, as can the lack of qi. Perhaps the bamboo and animals have adapted to the local environment, but the same cannot be said for humans." After that, Chan began to remove the bandages from his arm and asked Dongpil how long he thought it would take for his arm to recover. The bones were broken and dislocated, so it should have taken at least 2 months, but it healed in just 1 week, and the wounds from the battle with the Lushu disappeared in about 2 hours. "Is this normal?" he asked Dongpil, but he did not know what to say. "When the skin is torn, the body heals the wound. But what if this process is very much accelerated? What would happen if the body continued to heal even after the wound had healed?" "Boom," Zhang said, adding, "it will explode." Listening to this, Dongpil silently swallowed his saliva, feeling increasingly anxious. "What you experienced in the lonely bamboo grove," Zhang continued, "is good in a way, but the human body can't take it. To be more precise, after 2 or 3 months, the spiritual qi will become so powerful that it will be almost impossible to withstand it. That's why we have to get out of here before then, unless we want to die. But Ma Dongpil reminded the young master that he could not return home without the Lord's permission. Chong explained that the demon lord had only told him to go to the bamboo grove, but had not specified a time limit for his return and stay. He then asked Dongpil if he really believed that he was only here because of the Lord's order and for 8 months. Zhang explained that the first thing the Lord did was to grant his request. If we defeat about 2 more beasts, we will reach the heart of the bamboo grove, where we have never gone before. That's where the heads grow the spiritual bamboo, added Chan. He believed that he must obtain it in the next 3 months, and he told Dongpil about this goal. The moon was shining brightly, its rays falling on the ground, illuminating everything around with a unique glow. The girls were hanging around Chan, washing his hands and helping him take a shower. They also combed his hair. They washed every part of his body in detail. He was smoking a pipe, but he had a problem. He could not sleep. The 4th young master of the heavenly demon divine cult, Hong Imun, could not sleep because Serian, the 3rd master, was still alive. The master told him that if they did not reach the pinnacle of the demonic arts, they would not last 3 months in the lonely bamboo grove. That was his description of the lonely bamboo grove. The 4th one was sitting in front of the master and did not understand what he was trying to tell him after such an unexpected challenge. Then the master asked if it was true that he wanted to ask the younger man something. Yes, my master, that's exactly what it was, the 4th answered. Okay, I understand, the master replied. The heavenly demon, who lives in the heavens beyond the clouds and whose existence cannot be comprehended by the human mind, did not care that his disciples were at each other's throats. It seemed that he wanted to convey to them that in order to become his heir, they had to overcome this. What kind of world does a master look at? The 4th only wanted to see what the master sees, to look at this world through his eyes. Li then told the 4th that he thought the 3rd was doing a good job. This immediately angered the 4th, as he realized that Serian, the bastard, was not dead yet. He managed to survive the chi blockage and even the medicine didn't work, the 4th thought. And now he's become strong enough to survive in a lonely bamboo grove. How is this possible? After that, the owner told the 4th that he planned to call him back soon. At this point, the 4th man seemed to be frozen and did not know what to say. While bathing in the hot water, he could not stop thinking about this conversation with the owner. He couldn't understand whether it meant that everything he had gone through to get rid of the 3rd one was in vain. Angry, he said out loud, "Serian, this time when you come back, I will kill you." Everything he asked for was already on the table. Dongpil managed to get 5 bags of herbs to eliminate the turbidity. He even ran a special errand to bring cave pine tea, having learned from Chan that the aroma of this tea can scare away monsters. The constant battles with the azure lotus and other monsters were unpleasant, so he decided it was better to avoid them. He did not understand why the 3rd one needed herbs to eliminate the cloudiness. He looked at the cups that Dongpil had brought, and, satisfied with their appearance, asked him to bring more next time. To be honest, he could not give a clear answer. This month, the pharmacy at the Demon Lord's court is monitoring the ratio of the supreme healing broth that contains these herbs. And since it is the main ingredient, it will take at least 2 months to get more. Wait, a supreme healing decoction? Asked Zhang. The herbs to remove the cloudiness will be used to make it, he added, to which he received an affirmative answer. Didn't the doctor make me drink it for 3 months right after I woke up? He began to recall. The herbs to eliminate cloudiness can cure the body of any cloudiness, as their name suggests. They were given to a patient who almost died from the symptoms of blocked qi. These herbs are very powerful and can even attack demonic energy. They can be prescribed to a healthy person, but for a sick person, their effect can be fatal. Anyone with the slightest medical knowledge would not prescribe such a decoction. After that, Zhang asked Dongpil if he had ever heard of silk-clearing needling. It is an acupuncture technique used to tense muscles to make the body feel balanced when the muscles are too weak. Dongpil performed this procedure several times before going on some missions, after warming up his body with the circulation art. This procedure was not too complicated and, as far as Dongpil remembered, had a good effect. At this point, Zhang realized that they had given a supreme healing broth containing herbs to eliminate the turbidity of the body, which was in its most weakened state, and applied a silk clarifying needle to a body that was already tense. Who could have done this? It is doubtful that a doctor would have done the same. At least a high-ranking official or one of his students must have been behind it. At first, he thought that this girl was a demon who worked at a religious inner enlightenment center and was also a member of the Jocks family, one of the 7 families of the demonic cult. He also remembered that Yunhua had told him that Tai was the younger sister of the 4th young master. The next question that came up: the 4th damn master! How dare you try to kill your elder brother, even if it was a matter of fighting for the throne? The 4th master asked the doctor if he knew the most difficult way to get into the cult. The doctor asked him if he meant a lonely bamboo grove. A lonely bamboo grove is inaccessible, and even high-ranking representatives cannot enter it without the teacher's permission. The question of the 4th was not whether he could enter it himself, but whether he could set his eyes and ears there. The doctor explained that he had heard that the strategist general's control over the organization was so strong that even the elders could not touch them. But he denied it, saying that it was easy enough to get in. The strategist general in charge of the military department is considered a genius of this century. In any case, he would have turned the tide by finding out who had infiltrated the troops and determined who was involved in the power struggle, so he never prevents anyone from sneaking into the ranks of the soldiers. After these words of the fourth master, the doctor realized what the most likely outcome would be. Yes, this is the Court of Elders, an organization that is far from everything else. It exists solely to protect the demon lord and the cult, unlike other organizations that can change their positions depending on who is involved. To touch them is tantamount to challenging the Lord himself. Because of this, no one pays attention to them, because they are untouchable. And the fourth, ignoring them, made a fatal mistake in his plans. The doctor was not sure he understood him correctly, but he repeated that the third one was still alive. How so? The doctor asked in surprise. He could not understand how this happened, because the third one had been sent to a lonely bamboo grove more than 8 months ago. The fourth man explained that they had sent someone experienced and talented to accompany the third. Even so, the doctor thought it was impossible. Even the elders' masters should be on their guard in this place. Before being sent to the lonely bamboo grove, the third man's body was in good shape, but it was still that of a civilian who had not mastered martial arts. What kind of magic did the third man use to survive with such a body for 8 months in a lonely bamboo grove? Looking out the window, the fourth pondered this, and then turned to the doctor and asked him to gather his men and prepare enough weapons. Neither the poison blocking the chi nor the demon force could kill this rascal. Today is the last day that the fourth will wait for the decisive moment. The doctor asked the fourth if he would personally participate, but he refused, saying that it was not necessary because he did not think that this battle should turn into a dogfight. And there were those who were ready to dance to his tune. After that, the doctor realized exactly what kind of people the fourth one was planning to attract. These were the people who had long harbored a desire to take revenge on the third one even before the chi was blocked. The fourth only decided to add his swords to the game. The doctor asked him if the teacher did not treat them the same way, allowing them to do whatever they wanted and throwing them into real hell. The fourth thought this idea was brilliant. Meanwhile, back in the bamboo grove, Zhang was about to go to the heart of the matter. At first, Dongpil suggested that he calm down, emphasizing that Zhang didn't even know what herbs existed there. Zhang asked what difference it would make if he did. Whatever danger was out there, it wouldn't change the fact that time was running out, and he wasn't about to give up the spiritual bamboo. As he reached for his weapon, Dongpil suggested that he ask the teacher about who lived in the grove and how to prepare to meet him. But Chan repeated that it made no difference whether they knew or not. He then asked Dongpil if he knew why the demon lord sent high-ranking representatives to collect spiritual bamboo. If it was possible to prepare, he would have sent anyone. The reason he doesn't is because it makes sense to send someone as strong as they are. But for Dongpil, this was another argument not to go there. And when he calmed down a little bit, exhaled, he told Chan that he had become incredibly strong. But still, he was far from reaching the level of the elders. On the one hand, Zhang realized that Dongpil was right, and he could not compare to the 9 great demonic elders, the strongest in the cult, but he had a talent that the others did not. The art of the dark shadow, the phantom of the dark god, and the hidden technique of the assassin king, Zhang Haijin. During the war, when he survived as an assassin, he was unable to leave the hidden technique behind, boldly claiming to be unrivaled in it as the best assassin in the world. For the last 8 months, he had no need to use this technique in the grove. For him, it was a training ground, not a battlefield. But the heart of the lonely bamboo grove, full of secrets, was no longer a training ring. It was a place where he had to reach his goal, doing whatever it took, on the brink of life and death. And since he had transformed these dark shadows into art, he couldn't use the dark god Phantom, no matter how much he wanted to. That's why he needed the herbs to eliminate the taint. He needed to suppress the demonic energy in order to activate the dark god Phantom. Once he took the herbs, he would have half an hour. Given the size of the lonely bamboo grove, 30 minutes would be more than enough time to reach its heart. Once outside, Zhang asked Dongpil to stay here and promised to return soon. But the latter replied decisively, "No, young master. I will not allow you to do so." Chong then said that this was an order and asked Dongpil to leave, but he refused, saying that he could not obey such an order. If Zhang wanted to go through himself, he would have to kill him first. Zhang believed that Dongpil could lead him to the entrance to the heart, but he was not going to let him go any further. They arrived at a place that Zhang had visited before. Last time he hunted for Lucia here, he was sure that this was the entrance to the heart of the grove. The smell here was just disgusting, as if something was rotting nearby. Concerned, Dongpil began to shout, "Young master, look right in front of you!" In front of them were numerous corpses of monsters. The most horrifying thing was that they had all died, having lost their lives to bloody vomit. Pointing to one of the corpses, Chan noticed that there were several animals they had not seen before. One of them looked very much like a leopard, similar to a meja. This creature occupies a leading position in the hierarchy of the lonely bamboo grove. Dongpil had even heard that they ranked second in possession of spiritual power in this place, and even the elders had never seen this monster. When asked by Zhang who was first, Dongpil replied that it was probably that animal lying there. It is called the divided snake because of its distinctive appearance. It is a snake with two tails, and although this was the first time Dongpil had seen it, there was no doubt. It was strange why this monster, so strong for its small size, looked like this. At first glance, it didn't seem very powerful, and it didn't even seem to be poisonous. But no matter how strong the snake was, in the end it would just become another corpse like all the others, Chan thought. However, the condition of these creatures was very strange. Looking at the piles of monster corpses, one could conclude that something had struck them, but there was not a single wound on their bodies. And the spiritual bamboo that grew near the heart of the grove should have been blooming and thick, but it was all dried up and withered. The question arises as to who could have done this. It seemed as if all the life had been sucked out of everything around it. Zhang felt that the wind around him was surprisingly fresh. Dongpil immediately sensed his master's excitement and asked where he was looking, but Zhang asked him to be quiet. Dongpil didn't understand what had happened to Zhang, because he thought it was just a gentle breeze. The problem was that Zhang wouldn't let go of this strange feeling. It came from right there, from the heart of the lonely bamboo grove. After that, Chan turned to Dongpil. He told him that he would leave here alone, and told Dongpil the following. He must wait here and not follow him no matter what happens. With a serious look, Zhang looked ahead and said to himself, "This is it." Meanwhile, back in Li Zhongsang's chambers, the girls were gently massaging his shoulders, and he was enjoying it very much. With his eyes closed, he enjoyed it, and in his mind he thought, "Why did you come to me?" He asked this question to the jackal, who came to him through the power of communication in thoughts. The master thought that they had no more reason to meet. But it was not so. The jackal's face was angry, and he was roaring loudly. Judging by this, the owner concluded that he would soon appear for real. A loud roar echoed in the room, and the maids scattered in different directions. "Call the first guard," the master ordered. After a while, the first guard was sitting right in front of the master. He came as ordered and listened to what his master had to say. The master asked if there were any guards who went into the heart of the lonely bamboo grove while he was training in seclusion. There were none, the first one answered without hesitation. He added that if there had been such a high-profile incident, he would have reported it immediately. The host then asked if it was true that the third one had left with the third head. Li Chu also mentioned that the third one was quite a gifted young man. It is true. He is young, but he is already one of the 10 strongest masters in the Council of Elders. He has talent and experience, and so the Mudan decided that he was perfect for serving the third young master. The master couldn't understand how the third head, even with such opportunities, could have grown so much in 8 months. There was a limit. Today there was 1 day left before the full moon. The master realized that this was the reason why the jackal had decided to show himself. The maidservants were just beginning to recover from the unexpected visit. They apologized to the master for falling down. The master reasoned that the third man was so blinded by his greed that he was going straight to his death. The girls approached the master again and began to massage his shoulders. But he kept thinking that maybe, with incredible luck, he would be able to do it. He would be able to get down from the top of the mountain. Meanwhile, Chan did not restrain his energy and went towards the unknown. And this terrifying chi hanging in the air was making him very worried. With each step closer to the heart of the grove, it became stronger and stronger. At this rate, it would soon be difficult for him to even walk straight. It was incredible. He had never felt such powerful energy before. Not so long ago, he had felt something similar. It reminded him of what had happened then. But only similar to when he first met Li Zhongsang. The aura was so parasitic that at that moment it resembled death. The wind, which has no purpose, and the power contained within it are as much of a threat as Li Zhongsang. But there is also the same reward as when you meet him. Even after surrounding himself with demonic energy, he still suffers internal damage. Weighing up the situation, he realized that he wouldn't be able to take it much longer. What kind of a powerful creature is there inside him that he can't even handle his own energy? There was no choice but to use the herbs to eliminate the turbidity and suppress the demonic energy. After that, he would be able to use the hidden technique. The effect of the herbs spread throughout his body, and the demonic energy that had surrounded him just a second ago to protect him began to dissipate. Now he felt much lighter, the wind piercing through his body. It was the Dark God Phantom, the art of the Dark Shadow, a hidden technique used at the height of his fame by the world's best assassin king, Zhang Hajin. At this time, Dongpil stood in the place where Zhang had left him and felt the wind and demonic energy begin to disappear. What happened to the young master, he thought. When the wind died down, he saw that Chong was no longer around. Chong walked forward, feeling nothing in his path. Everything seemed to be flying through him. It was as if he was invisible, walking like a ghost. The pressure was no longer felt, and this is the beauty of this technique. If everything went on like this, he would be able to get to the heart of the grove before the herbs wore off. However, the bamboo grove was challenging him, and he responded in kind, challenging it to show him what it was hiding in its heart. Chong stepped forward, step by step, but suddenly his foot stopped being transparent and he stumbled. He flew forward and fell straight to the ground. Oh shit, this shouldn't have happened. It was impossible for him to trip over a stone while using the Dark God Phantom. What is this? A spiritual stone or something? Damn demon forest! Shouted Chong in anger. But when he turned his head back, he saw a cute yellow ear that looked very small. Then his eyes landed on a tail that was even cuter. What the heck? He asked himself as he looked at this cute little creature in front of him. It was a little fox cub whose head he had tripped over. It was sleeping and didn't even wake up when he did. Who is this sly asshole? Thought Chong as he looked at this cute little creature. What is this fox doing here? Especially one so small and cute. But Chong remembered that Dongpil had said that the deeper he went into the lonely bamboo grove, the more strange creatures he would meet. So, this fox cub is not here by chance. Given the peculiarities of this place where he is now, one should not judge by appearances. You can't let your guard down for a second. But Chong could not help but blush at the cuteness of this fox. It was so cute that he wanted to pet it. It almost enchanted Chong like the nine-tailed fox, but he had to pull himself together and move on. He decided that when he returned, he would try to wake it up. There was still a long way to go, not as long as the unexpected. After walking a little further, he came to a dead end. He started wandering around, thinking he was lost, and the lack of a passage made him very worried. This meant that he was facing the spiritual bamboo he was looking for. The one that at first seemed to be a dead end. But Chong felt that he found it somehow too easily. Its spiritual energy was incredible. He could feel its greatest concentration here with his hand in one place. The strongest spiritual bamboo in the entire lonely bamboo grove grows here. And if he cleansed just 3 stems now, he would become the strongest master of inner energy. But which 3? One cannot be so greedy. His body is not strong enough to take in that much ki. He had to achieve his goal, so he decided to take only 1. More would have been just greed. Not far away, he saw something very strange. A single stalk of bamboo stood off to the side, but why was it alone? As he got closer, Chong began to pull, trying to pull it out of the ground. His spiritual energy was so pure that he could receive it without purification techniques. Since he had decided to take only 1 stalk of bamboo, he thought that this one might as well. At that moment, the fox's ears began to move, and Chong had almost pulled out the plant by the roots. And when the root appeared above the ground, the fox's eye opened. It woke up and felt something. It was obvious that it was anxious. Soft, fragrant, and easy to chew. Chong had already tasted the plant he had pulled out. But it was strange that he didn't feel anything after he started chewing. How could this be? After all, this plant was definitely filled with spiritual energy. He should have already felt a wave of chi flowing into him, but nothing happened except a warmth in his chest. Disappointed, he decided to throw the plant on the ground and get up. After that, he reached for his sword hanging from his belt and began to pull it out. He planned to cut down the real spiritual bamboo. So he swung the sword and struck, and sparks began to fall from the bamboo. But after the blow, there was not a single mark on the tree. This struck Chong very hard, because the blow was of sufficient force. Is my sword really that weak? He thought, examining his blade. He tried to strike again, this time even harder. He did not rule out the possibility that the spiritual bamboo here was completely different. But again, stroke after stroke, nothing happened. It seemed as if he was hitting metal. This began to seriously annoy him. However, he did not give up and decided to cut the bamboo, no matter what it took. He allowed the blade to follow his will, putting his aura into the stroke as if it were his body. "Here it is, the blade of the moon!" shouted Chong and swung with all his might. A bell rang and a red ribbon was left behind the sword. With this stroke, he managed to cut through the bamboo. He put 90% of his strength into this stroke, so it would have been surprising if the bamboo hadn't fallen. The bamboo was gigantic, and when it fell to the ground, dust flew in all directions. Tapping on it, Chong felt that the bamboo was strong enough to even be used as a weapon. It was hard to imagine how much spiritual ki had accumulated in this bamboo that it became as hard as steel. The more Chong learned about this place, the more amazing it seemed to him. As he was looking at the bamboo, the fox cub reappeared next to him, and he noticed it. It was sitting there like a cute little animal, not showing any sign of aggression. But because of the surprise, Chong was startled and quickly jumped back. You could see a question mark in the fox's eyes as it looked at Chong. After Chong calmed down a bit, he realized that it was the same fox cub, but when did it come to? He realized that he had been distracted by the spiritual bamboo, but he should have noticed when the fox cub woke up. Sitting on the ground, the fox cub ran closer and closer to him. Chong asked it what it wanted, and at that moment he reminded himself, Don't let your guard down, Zhang Hajin. Although the fox looked cute, it was still a creature from a lonely bamboo grove. And although he didn't feel any bloodlust from it, he still had to be on his guard. However, his hypersensitivity told him that everything was fine. It was so small that Zhang thought that even if it attacked, its attacks were unlikely to cause serious damage. He couldn't help himself and decided to pet the fox, at least a little. When he reached out to pet it, the cub grabbed his hand with its little teeth and started playing like a child. After a while, Dongpil was already at Chan's side and made sure that the third one had indeed gotten the bamboo. His spiritual chi was amazing and the bamboo was extremely strong. Chan even had to use his sword aura. The fact that the bamboo trunk was incredibly straight was easy to see. Dongpil even doubted whether he could have cut the bamboo like that even if he had the best blade. But the young master succeeded. "What about this fox cub?" the young master asked, pointing at him. The fox had followed him all the way to this place. Zhang explained to Dongpil that he had found it sleeping in the center of the grove, and that the fox almost bit off his finger when he tried to pet it. Looking at his hand, Zhang noticed that the bite mark had strangely disappeared completely. "How dare you bite, young master!" Dongpil shouted in rage, starting to draw his sword, but Zhang stopped him in time. It seems that he is now ready to attack even cute animals in an attempt to protect the young master. Luckily, the young master asked him to calm down and come over to him as he stood by the cut bamboo. The bamboo was too big to carry back, so Chan offered to clean it right there. Putting his hands to the bamboo, he began to use a limitless technique. It was all fascinating to watch. Dongpil watched carefully as Zhang performed his technique, watching the energy being absorbed by his body. At one point, all the impurities disappeared, and the air around them became clean. This showed not only that Zhang had a unique technique, but also that he had a deep understanding of the Qi technique. The more Dongpil watched his master, the less he reminded him of a 20-year-old boy. Zhang seemed to be a seasoned warrior who had lived for decades, given how skillfully he absorbed energy from the bamboo. After a while, the bamboo was completely dry. So dry that it began to fall apart into small pieces. The more it crumbled, the more it looked like gunpowder. And the longer Chan did this, the less bamboo was left. Chan's body was completely immersed in this process. It was as if he was drinking water from this bamboo. But suddenly he opened his eyes wide. The process was over. "It's done," said Chan. "Now the juice of this spiritual bamboo is the best elixir." "Excellent work, young master," Dongpil praised him. Zhang replied that it was not difficult, but Dongpil considered it so valuable that he was even afraid to be the first to use the elixir. Zhang asked him if he was tired of being so compliant, but Dongpil insisted, "It's yours, and it's only right that you drink it first and do it yourself." Zhang didn't want to believe that Dongpil was going to continue to be so modest, so he tried to solve it by saying that they were on good terms, and asked him to drink it quickly. "You've saved me many times, so you fully deserve this. I even think I should give you everything, not just half." Dongpil's expression showed that he took these words to heart. Zhang felt it was his fault that they were stuck in such a terrible place because of him, but he also recognized that Dongpil had done a very good job. Such touching words were important to Dongpil. Unable to contain his emotions, he shouted again that he would protect Zhang until the last day of his service, and no danger would touch him unless it was over his dead body. Zhang asked him to just stop and finally drink. "Yes, after my service is over, I will never forget your great mercy. I will remember until the end of my days. I, Dongpil, must return to the Elder's Court as soon as we leave this place. But I will always carry your name in my heart," he continued to shout. And now the precious juice was splashing in a huge bowl made of bamboo. Zhang could not resist pouring it all directly into Dongpil's mouth. He shouted at him to swallow because he wanted to see him do it, calling him a cudgel. But at that moment he felt something coming. This energy was giving Zhang no rest. As Dongpil was coughing, Zhang told him that someone was coming, and it wasn't just one creature approaching. It felt like there were a lot of them. "What the hell? I can feel something in the air too," said Zhang. None of them knew what was happening, but Zhang was holding a giant bowl with juice in it. Using his concentration, Dongpil could feel all the creatures of the lonely bamboo grove approaching. He realized that they were gathering around them. First, he had to drink the sap, which Zhang did, pouring all the sap into himself. Then he asked Dongpil if he had memorized the layout of the area. When he answered yes, Zhang smiled because his friend was a very reliable guy. Then he looked at the ground. He was surprised that the fox cub was still there. Even more surprising was that it was sleeping, despite all the chaos. Zhang couldn't just leave it after it had come so far with him. "Dongpil, catch!" he said, and the fox was flying right into his arms. Zhang ordered Dongpil to hold the fox in his arms and run away, making sure it would not be harmed. He decided to stop the enemies himself. And now a lot of creatures were right in front of them. Zhang began to close his eyes and completely immersed himself in his power. Now they were not approaching him, but he was approaching them, ordering these creatures to come closer. Dongpil, hysterical with worry for his young master, begged him to go forward, and he promised to block their path. Zhang explained in plain language that when he gave an order, you just have to listen to him. He hit Donpul so hard that he flew backwards, but he covered the fox because it was his master's order. Donpul felt the force of the blow on himself. His master's skill seemed like an incredible martial art. Behind him, a three-headed rooster was already flying toward the young master. A threefold slashing sword strike hit the rooster right on the head. I should have stayed in the chicken coop instead of flying out at the young master, thought Zhang. His absolute assassin king technique that he had been forced to hide while practicing the demonic arts was now no longer restricted. He was no longer restraining himself from using martial arts as he had done before during his training. Meanwhile, on the top of the cliff, Li stood and admired the view. He felt that the jackal, who was the owner of the lonely bamboo grove, had left the spiritual world and disappeared. But why this happened was a difficult question for Li Zhongsang to understand. He could only guess what had happened there. After that, a bamboo forest appeared right next to his place on the mountainside. Li decided to check what was going on there, and when he saw the third one there, he realized what the reason was. He couldn't help but notice the changes in him after the blockade. To be more precise, it seemed that the third man had become a completely different person. His essence, which Li had seen in the demonic justice pavilion, was death. Watching him deal with the monsters, the great ninth heavenly demon Li Chongsan wondered, "Third, have you been to the afterlife?" After a while, Chong was already walking on the bodies of the slain monsters. Li poured himself some wine. He was pleased that he had invited him to the demon justice pavilion, and he could not ignore the jackal. He asked the little fox what he saw in the third one. At that moment, the third one was holding a sword very tightly in his hand. His eyes were filled with rage and thirst for killing, and his fangs were half bared. "Pretty big," said Zhang, asking if he was the head of the grove or something. But before he could get an answer, the cat swung its paw and Chan managed to avoid being hit. The fact that the cat attacked during the greeting made Chan angry, but he noticed that it was quite fast. "Oh, how I hated this forest," thought Zhang, remembering how many bamboo stems he had jumped over to avoid the monsters. How many threats he had come face to face with, and this one was the strongest of them all. The size of this cat was impressive. It was necessary to act drastically, and Zhang chose to make a leap upwards. As he did so, the cat's face lost one of its blades and felt the full force of the young third one. She growled, seeing death in the eyes of the guy who knocked her down. After such a jump, it was difficult for Chan to stop, and he knocked down several more bamboo stalks on his way. If you combine the demonic arts, a footwork technique like the Ascension Leap can also be a great attack. However, as he looked to the side, he felt slightly disappointed. The disappointment was because he thought that this cat was one of the strongest in the lonely bamboo grove. Seeing the fog in front of him, he said, "Stop hiding, come out. I don't have time to play with you." And then, from behind the veil of fog, bright eyes and the silhouette of a giant cat began to appear. A smile appeared on the boy's face. With dozens of kilograms of mucus flying out of its mouth, it roared. But only one blade remained on its face. Now Zhang felt that it had become faster, and this time he was unable to avoid the attack. The blow was so strong that it knocked down bamboo in its path, this time not on purpose. At that moment, another giant cat appeared. And then there were three of them, all of them coming closer to the broken bamboo that Zhang had broken with his body. The impact was quite strong, and he lay on the ground coughing. At this point, his eyes filled with rage. "It seems like these damn giant cats wanted to die," he thought. The attack was extremely powerful. One more hit like that, and he would go straight to King Yang in the afterlife. Although he had already dealt with many of the beasts in this grove, he could do the same to this one as he had to the others. However, the power of his demonic arts was felt in a completely different way. This was because of the spiritual bamboo. The spiritual chi received from it had not yet fully transformed into demonic energy. Spiritual chi reduces the power of demonic energy, and thus weakens his demonic arts. But the cats did not wait and roared very loudly. In addition, these monsters continued to attack him, and he had no more herbs left to remove the taint, so now he could not use the covert technique. "Oh shit," he thought as they attacked even before he could blink. He barely had enough reaction time to dodge. But there were claw marks on his back. They seemed to attack instinctively without any reason, but they are not as strong as the higher masters. If you prolong the fight with them, you can die. And they didn't even give him time to think. So he decided not to think, but to just start beating them, so as not to make the same mistake twice. He knocked out the first tiger with a clear punch, but he could not keep hitting these animals until they fell down. It would take forever to knock them down one by one, because there were more and more of them around. Looking one of the monstrosities straight in the eye, Chan realized that he had no other choice. It was pointless to fight them alone. He had to put them all together to get out of here. If his demonic art is weakened, he just needs to strengthen the demonic energy. And he began to do so. Glowing red, all the energy seemed to be boiling inside him, and he shouted that he would kill them all. The rock's explosive punch, hitting the ground with his fist, red flames spread around him. This energy carried them away, and they could not stay on their feet. From a height, They could see the wave he had formed right inside the grove. Meanwhile, Donpil was busy saving the fox cub. He ran through the woods for a long time and finally ran to safety. He ran so fast that sweat began to appear on his face. But there was only one problem. When he looked back, he felt something strange. He felt the forest begin to tremble. Donpil began to carefully lower the fox cub to the ground. He wondered if it was possible that the young master had caused such chaos there. He was not sure what was going on. But the fox looked at him with big, kind eyes. Meanwhile, Jung wandered around with his sword in his hand and could not figure out where the exit was. After using such a powerful demonic art, his legs felt heavy, like a ton of weight. He needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Otherwise, he might run into other animals. As he walked forward, Jung left footprints on the bamboo so as not to get lost. When he touched the bamboo, he felt that there was no moisture in it at all. Looking around, he realized that all the plants here were just as dry. It was the same at the entrance to the depths of the lonely bamboo grove, where piles of monster corpses were lying. "Did I come from the wrong place?" he asked himself, looking ahead, not noticing that a very unpleasant surprise was approaching behind him. Suddenly he turned around, which he did very quickly. Behind him was a giant snake. One look at its teeth could have shocked an ordinary person. The enraged snake immediately attacked Chan, wrapping both of his arms with two of its tails and grabbing his sword with its fangs. It squeezed the sword in Chan's hands very hard, and as it bit, the sword began to rust. Squeezing the sword even harder, the snake broke it into two pieces. This was especially unfortunate because the sword was a very good weapon. The weaned snake is known for causing drought. Did it really cause all that bamboo to dry up? This means that it is true that the weaned snake is stronger than the Meiji. Although at first glance it didn't seem so gigantic, when it coiled around Chang's body, it was strong enough to even knock him down. This vile Jun was giving Chang no rest. He could not push it away because his hands were tied by the snake itself. All he could see in front of him was a giant mouth as the serpent opened it. At that moment, the sharp blade of the sword pierced the serpent's head and almost stabbed into Chan's head. Dongpil appeared in time to save him. And just in time, he struck the head of this monster. After that, he grabbed the snake with his hand and threw it aside. Dongpil's joy was overwhelming because Jung was not seriously injured. Dumpel's sword scared Chan so much that he almost died of fear. "What an asshole," said Jung, for he had ordered Dongpil to leave. But how could a guard leave his master? Dongpil promised to make sure that Jung got out of this place. Suddenly, the bamboo began to shake, and the leaves from its tops began to fall down. This noise was quite strange. It seemed they had gotten here faster than Chan could even imagine. "Oh shit, there's even more of them. There's a whole bunch of them." "Dongpil, how far is it to the exit?" asked Jung, and he replied that it was about 2 kilometers. It was too far to run away. The beasts would surely catch up with them. If Jung wanted to get out, he had to end it right there. This time, however, Dongpil offered to hold them off and asked Jung to go. "Don't talk nonsense," Jung said. "We'll get out of here together." And Dongpil agreed. Even if one of them stays behind to buy time, there are still too many of them, and they can't get rid of the pursuers. They are simply furious, roaring loudly, and there is no fear or stopping for them. Only death can stop them. Either Jung and Dongpil will kill them right here, or they will die on this spot. Jung understood these rules perfectly well, and was the first to rush at the giant cat, hitting it hard. And suddenly he remembered his friend's last words. "Jung Ha-jin, do you know what life is?" At that moment he could answer himself. "Hell no, I don't." He threw these monsters around left and right, always existing as someone else's tool. That's why he fucking wants to live so badly at this moment. He will become so strong that no one will dare to touch him. Because this time he's going to live free, which is what he's been dreaming about for so long. Suddenly, when he was fighting a frontal opponent, the unexpected happened. A cat appeared behind him and stabbed him right in the back with its sharp claws. The blow was so strong that his body was dragged along the ground. His back hit all the stones in his path that were in this ruthless forest. And the sharp claws came closer and closer, scattering stones in their path. "Unbearable bastards," thought Jung as they scratched him again in the same place as last time. "I think this cat needs a hard punch to wake up." And gathering all his strength in his fist, Jung swung, shouting, "I'm not going to die!" He had to strike at the same moment because the cat's claws were already right next to his face. It was the same cat as the last time, because it didn't have a single claw. The explosive punch of the rock helped Chong punch a big hole in the head of this nasty cat. The shockwave was so strong that the cat was pulled back just from the force of the blow. Its muzzle was melted and melted like plastic. Jung was breathing heavily after the attack. It took tremendous effort to deliver such a powerful punch. Seeing this, Dongpil, worried, ran up to him, asking if he was okay, and saw small pieces of this huge cat in front of him. "My friend, I can't even stand properly anymore. Could you carry me on your back, please?" asked Jung, his legs already giving out. But Dongpil said it would be a bit difficult. At first, Jung didn't understand what he meant, but when he felt the wave pass under his feet, he began to understand why Dongpil could not carry him. Seeing the new hordes of monsters appearing out of nowhere, Dongpil said that this time he would definitely be the bait, and Zhang had to get out as soon as possible. One of the cats had 3 eyes, 1 on its forehead and 2 in their proper places. Damn it. It was at this point that flashbacks from his past life began to return. He had managed to be resurrected after such a horrible death. In this life, he could not afford to die so senselessly. Dongpil begged him to get out the same way he came. And the 3-headed cat, looking like a creature with a weak bladder, crept closer and closer, leaving a trail behind it. The fox's good-natured eye was watching them intently. They all stared at this one eye. The fox cub ran closer and started walking around Chan and Dongpil, and they could not even understand what was happening. Why did this fox cub start walking in circles so strangely? At that moment, its little eyes began to change, taking on a different, sharper, and more piercing look. There was thunder and lightning struck right where they were standing. Everything around them was illuminated by a bright radiance, the rays of which spread far and wide. After a while, the fox cub was sitting on Chong's shoulder, licking his head. It ran over his body and sat down next to him, trying to wake him up, because he was lying down and sleeping. After this giant lightning strike, they lost consciousness. But then Zhang began to gradually open his eye. He saw the same fox cub in front of him. What happened? Did I die again? Thought Chan, as he could not understand anything. The pain in his whole body showed that he was still alive. Then he looked closely at the fox cub. It jumped on him, playing with him as if he were its owner. With fear in his eyes, Zhang looked at it and asked if it was trying to eat him. The fox cub put its little paws on his abs and gently looked directly into Chang's eyes. Zhang was panicked and shouted at Dongpil to do something immediately, but Dongpil was unconscious and lying there without moving. The divine cult of the heavenly demon is the capital. Everyone was on their knees cheering. Long live the Lord! Long live the divine cult of the heavenly demon! We are moved to tears by the blessing of the sacred God. All those present bowed their heads in worship. Without exception, from the youngest to the oldest. Li Chongsan was sitting on his throne, and not a single muscle in his face moved. He looked at the audience with a stony gaze. The first question he asked was after pouring himself some wine. What are the expected expenses for the Mara festival? About 57,000 naira, Mudam replied. That's a whole 12,000 more than last year, he added. He also noted that the special military forces are on duty, so there should be significantly fewer participants. However, it is still unclear why the costs have increased. He said that he would like to get an explanation for this and addressed it specifically to the master of the inner organ of enlightenment. Taking a few steps forward, he said he would explain. She began to tell him that it was confirmed that 4 of the 7 cult families would be present at the festival, with the Demon Sword family taking center stage. The 7 most famous families of the demonic cult have been protecting it for hundreds of years. It is because of this that she thinks it is only right that they show their dignity and generosity by rewarding them. This girl is called Xiao Yongshim, and she is a master of the inner enlightenment organ of the heavenly demon cult. Mudam went on to say that the cult's worthiness is confirmed by history, and they have won victories so far, and will continue to win for another 1,000 years. If the heads of families participate in the ancestral rite, they will be honored to taste the drink of the 6 heavenly spirits prepared by the Lord himself. The dignity and generosity of the cult is expressed through the Lord, not through money. Because of this, he ordered her to cut back on spending. She apologized for her incompetence and promised to submit new proposals by noon tomorrow. After that, she took a few steps back and took her seat. That was all there was to the progress reports from the internal and external demon heads. However, the head assumed that the former was still practicing. Mudam explained that he had not even left the 3rd hall of demon guards yet. What about the second one? The leader asked. He took a few steps forward. The second young master of the heavenly demon divine cult was Kwang Pyong. Li asked him if he planned to return to training. He replied that martial arts had become a part of his daily life. He also believed that it was pointless to train behind closed doors until change came. Listening to this, the others noticed how confident he was in talking about his martial skills in front of the overlord. It was very brave of him. There is no need to train those who know their place. He was allowed to act as he saw fit. Everyone knows that the master is very strict in his assessment of fighting skills. And here is such a compliment to the second young master, despite the fact that the first young master is still in seclusion. Everyone who heard and saw the master's attitude toward him believed that the second young master could be the best contender. The second one thanked him, bowed, and then returned to his seat. Now the floor was turned to the 4th, who also stepped out of line. You've changed lately, Li said, noting that he seemed to have been working hard. He bowed and thanked him, but his next word sounded like a warning. It's too late. The master went on to say, if you want to surpass the others, you will have to train even harder, and even then it will be difficult to reach their skill. The 4th one could only say, I will take that under advisement, master. The master asked him to devote himself completely to this work. Even as he listened to these words, he told himself that he should not panic because his master had always told him this. Now he believed that he needed to focus not only on martial arts, but also on using the power of the allies, and just keep doing what he was doing. It was the turn of the fifth, who also took a few steps forward. Proudly raising her head, she walked out. The fifth young lady of the Heavenly Demon Divine cult is Ju So-yun. Very good, said Lee Jung-sang. He then added that there were limits to how far her martial arts could surpass her talents. He asked her to choose one of the 10 great demonic arts after this meeting with the senior courtmaster. His generosity she would never forget. The fourth, looking at this, listened and envied that the master had just praised her, and even wondered if he should change his plans. After that, the little girl came out and he told her that she was neglecting her health. Since the sixth one was not present, the seventh young lady of the Heavenly Demon Divine cult, Che Yumin, was next. He reminded her that the cult was not a place for spoiled children, and if she had been stronger, she would not have found herself in this state. He told her that she needed to work even harder. He asked a serious question to such a small girl. Are you afraid of death? With tears in her eyes, she answered, No. I never taught you to rest, he continued. And he warned everyone. If they want power, they need to make more effort. The most important thing is to cross your own boundaries. Tipping his glass of wine, he asked them if they understood. Putting the glass down on the table, he continued. He noted that the third man was late, but he knew that he should already be here and gave permission for him to enter. The third young master, Soryan, responded to the call of the holy bishop. His foot stepped on the red carpet. His brothers and sisters looked at him and could not believe how he had recovered so quickly. They also could not believe that he had come out of the secluded bamboo grove. In a proud voice he said, Greetings to the master, and looked him directly in the eyes, not looking away. And he thought to himself, It's been a long time, Demon Lord. He looked at Chan and couldn't help but notice the powerful and violent demonic energy that was bubbling up in him. And he asked himself, how long has he been training to attain such strength? When the word excellent was heard from the master, everyone present could not believe that he had expressed the highest praise he had ever given. The master asked how he liked the lonely bamboo grove, whether it was a good place to get some fresh air. With a smile and the thought that he had already heard many strange things, Chan replied that it was surprisingly quite fresh. Lee met these words with a slight smile. He rested his hands on the armrests of his throne and said, Come with me. I wonder where he is taking me. And are you going with him? Thought Zhang, assuming that he had answered too harshly. After all, he had obeyed the order and returned from the grove, just as he had been told. The first guard was told by the Lord to take care of the others. He told the rest of them that the royal meeting was over and they could go. As Zhang followed him, he was afraid that this madman might send him to an even more horrible place, because he had survived in a lonely bamboo grove. At the time, outside, Seo was discussing that he would have to recount the expenses. She ordered it done because it was something that had to be done. Her husband, however, was more interested in why the strategist general was not present at the meeting today and whether she knew anything about it. But she knew nothing, only that he was always busy. However, she didn't think it was the Mara festival, and she had heard that the Northern Traditional Schools had recently embarked on a very interesting venture, and it seemed to her that it was probably because of that. However, wherever they were from, he had never met a sane person who complained about being part of tradition and suggested that they were probably doing something stupid again. After this meaningless talk, another man approached them and asked what had happened to the third young master, as it was the first time he had seen the Demon Lord give such a high rating. The second one explained that he had heard that he had survived the chi blocking, but that he did not seem to have experienced anything at all. The fourth reflected on the fact that the third had not only returned alive, but had also attracted everyone's attention. What did the Overlord see in this bastard? He asked himself. He thought that he should have killed him when he was weak after blocking the chai. At that time, the Overlord was already there with Chan. The boy was eagerly waiting to hear what his master would say. They found themselves in this gazebo again. Such a cozy garden did not seem like a place suitable for a demonic cult. The leader asked him to sit down, and in a moment, Zhang was sitting on the chair opposite him. He had survived 8 months in that hellish lonely bamboo grove, but he had no need to be afraid, because he had done everything he had been told to do and had not done anything stupid. As was his custom, Li poured him wine again. And Chan thought again, when was the last time I drank alcohol? Quite unexpectedly, Li told him that he still needed to learn the Black Dragon Mountain movement technique. He didn't even know what it was, and he couldn't even ask in that setting, and he couldn't drink normally because he was so uncomfortable. Li remarked, I noticed that you have added something to your true demonic arts. He thought it looked like a martial art of a Buddhist school. Can he really understand everything just by looking at a person? Thought Chang. He knew Li was strong, but could he really see through martial arts? Could he? Could he be angry that Zhang had changed a true demon art without permission? What should we do now? But all these assumptions were useless because Li said it was a very good job. It is not easy to create a martial arts technique that is above the level of the 10 greatest demonic arts. Chang felt uncomfortable and replied that it did require a lot of thought. Li asked him how he came to the art of Buddhism. Zhang explained that he had tried many different things and found that it was the most suitable for becoming stronger, and the results were very good. But Li pointed out that Zhang had never thought ahead before. At this point, Chang didn't know what to say or how to respond. However, Li continued and said that maybe demonic art lacks power and influence, but as a basis, it is the best technique of their cult. And if he had thought about it a little more, he would not have had to combine demonic arts with other arts. Li added that Zhang planted a flower bed where a tree should grow. But it's okay, because Zhang managed to achieve great results. Having said that, Li continued, "Chang, you can go now." He poured him wine and now he wants him to just leave? Why the hell did he even invite him here? He talked about his martial arts. Couldn't he have just sent a letter? Well, if he stays, Li can start asking about things, but it's probably best to leave. "Then I will go," Zhang said with a bow. Pointing to the bottle of wine, Li asked him to take it with him. "This is a reward for the work you've done. Who would have thought that you would add Buddhist art to create a new one? That's why you surprised me so much," Li said. The leftover wine made Chang very happy. Li was still thinking about how Chang could not have known about the difficulties of the Supreme Demon. It was just a coincidence. He also wondered if he would ever see the third one again. If so, this winter will be very interesting, Li thought. After that, the chariot's wheels rattled against the stone it was traveling on. It was hard to breathe next to the master, and the more Zhang thought about it, the more ridiculous it seemed. "He is the Lord, and he gives a half-empty bottle of alcohol instead of a full one." Riding in the cart with Dongpil, Zhang kept complaining to him about the master, and the latter would snatch the bottle from his hands and tell him that it was the drink of the 6 heavenly spirits. Dongpil then explained that only the chosen ones could drink this drink, and he could not believe that the demon lord had personally given it to Zhang. The drink of the 6 heavenly spirits is a high-class cult alcohol that all the overlords have enjoyed and still enjoy. It is a special drink that is given to people who have made great achievements. Just being able to drink it is the highest honor and glory. Moreover, this drink is made by the demon lord himself. No money can buy that. Tired of listening to Dongpil, Zhang said to him, "Let's drink it when we get back." But he replied that this was impossible, because once he escorted Zhang to his residence, his service would be complete. After that, he would need to go back to the court of elders. With a saddened expression, he told Chang that it had been an honor to work for him. Wiggling the bottle, Chang asked him, "You really don't want to try this drink?" But when Zhang said, "Okay, I'll just drink it by myself," Dongpil started to yell, "Wait, young master, please let me think about it." And so after a few minutes of driving, they were right outside the residence. Standing in front of the gate, Zhang said, "I'm finally back, and it was really great to see this place after such a long time." And a fox cub ran out next to him, and it was amazing how it ended up here. Zhang had brought it out of the forest himself and took on the responsibility of taking care of it. A smile could be seen on the fox's face after these words. This was their home now, and Chan opened the gate through which they entered. It had been a long time since Zhang had seen Anhua. At that moment, it was as if a bolt of lightning had pierced his head. Panic was evident on his face. The fox cub in his arms began to whimper. He could feel a very strange energy around him and could not even understand what this ominous aura was. Was there really someone here? Thought Zhang, looking around. Judging by the smell, they had left quite recently. He also realized by the smell in which direction they had gone. How did they dare to hide in his residence? Who are these people? He thought. Hua peeked out from behind the door and asked if he had returned. Her face reflected mixed emotions. She seemed frightened, and then delighted that her master had returned. He met her with a smile and said, "Yes, he has returned." She fell on her knees before him and said, "The divine teachings are unquestionable. All demons have fallen at your feet. I welcome the third young master." He asked her if this was really necessary. She had tears in her eyes and told him that she had heard something bad happen to him in a lonely bamboo grove. Judging by her reaction, she had really been waiting for him, and he hadn't even mentioned her. He also asked her if she was okay. She couldn't hold back her tears and said that she was fine, just glad to see him safe and sound. Although he hadn't been here for 8 months, the place was quite clean. She came to clean every day so that he could come back any day and feel comfortable. If Anhua is okay, then those people are just watching, Zhang realized. She then told him that she needed to heat some more water, as she had just learned of his return. It would take a while, and she offered him a snack to start with. But he wanted to wash first because he was eager to get all the dirt of the lonely bamboo grove off of him. After a while, he was lying in the warm water, and all the tension was gradually disappearing from him, but he could not ignore someone's presence. Is it really him? The one who kept his eyes on me during the meeting? The one who caused my chi to be blocked? Thought Chang. The fourth young master was Zhang Yimun, As soon as the thought of him came into Chong's mind, he immediately began to freak out, kicking the water and shouting, "As soon as I catch you, you're dead!" First, he needs to understand how the Heavenly Demon Divine cult works, because right now all he knows is that the Demon Lord is in charge. With so little information, he has no control. He cannot predict how the Demon Lord will act, so he needs to find out who he can turn to for help. After that, he wants to get them on his side and achieve the right to enter and leave the cult at will. Thus, one day he will be able to leave here and become free. At least there is one good news. He is now the third disciple of the great Demon Lord. No one is supposed to know what he is planning, but his high status should serve as a support for him. He decided to climb the social ladder and have some fun even then. It was a great plan, very strategic and well thought out. Meanwhile, the fourth man was smoking his pipe when a doctor came in and told him that he should smoke less for the sake of his health. He had hardly picked up a cigarette lately and promised the doctor that he would quit when the time was right, thanking him for his concern. However, the doctor did not come to talk about cigarettes. He wanted to ask the fourth man why he had called off the people from the third young gentleman's residence. Although the doctor understood that the fourth man was understandable, this time he could not see the reason for his actions. The fourth just kept smoking, instead of finishing what he had started. The next words came out. "I didn't know," came from the young gentleman. "I didn't know how the third one would react. That's why I had to tell them to come back," said the fourth. "I thought I had everything planned, but I was wrong." It was surprising to the doctor that the young gentleman admitted he was wrong. Today was the first time the fourth had seen the third at a meeting since the Chi blocking incident, and he had changed a lot. He was much better. The fourth did not know what had happened in the lonely bamboo grove, but it seemed that the third had regained his skill. However, that was not the reason why the fourth one had deviated from the plan. The third one looked like the Saurian he had always known, but it was as if the fourth one was looking at a completely different person, as if he had become someone else. His gaze was directed at the fourth, as if he knew everything he had done. The fourth man explained to the doctor that he needed to rethink his thoughts. The doctor immediately realized that this was a lie, because the fourth was confused by the changes in the third young master. "What are the subjects doing after my order?" asked the fourth. He replied that they complained about deviations from the plan and asked what he should do next. The fourth ordered him to give them some money. They are obsessed with money, just like the third one, so everything will be fine as long as they get it. After weighing everything up, the fourth realized that attacking Saurian now was not a good idea. And in fact, he no longer knew how to proceed. The table was covered with delicious food, and on it was the same bottle of drink that Donpil admired.
"What is all this?" He ran into the room, couldn't contain his emotions, and shouted, and there was Zhang sitting on a chair with Hua next to him.
Zhang started shouting at Dongpil to sit down quickly, because Anhua had prepared all of this. The girl was sitting there shaking and asking the host if he was sure she could sit with them. She believed that she should eat after him, as it was supposed to be according to the rules. At this point, Zhang yelled at her to stop talking nonsense and enjoy the food. Dongpil and Anhua sat silently at the table, inhaling this beautiful aroma of food. After pouring this precious drink, they drank together. Without holding back their hunger, they immediately started eating all these delicious foods. To play a little joke on Dongpil, the girl pushed him, and as he was falling, Zhang started pouring alcohol directly into his mouth. The fox also enjoyed the food that was left, and this friendly, pleasant evening was coming to an end. The dishes were already empty. Not even a single drop of alcohol was left, even though Zhang hadn't refused. Dongpil was already drunk. It was easy to see, and Zhang even suggested that he call it a night. Barely moving his tongue, Dongpil objected and said he was sober. So he asked the girl for more drinks, and she immediately ran away. Before the drinks arrived, Zhang asked his friend Dongpil for permission to ask him something. Blushing, Dongpil waited for Zhang to ask the question. Zhang wanted to meet someone who knew all about the workings and connections of the organization, and asked Dongpil if he could think of anyone. Dongpil named a few people who were fairly well informed about the organization's affairs, but he didn't know much about the relationships between people. However, he had heard that the chief strategist in the military department has a lot of information about it, although it would be difficult to meet with him. "Who else can I talk to about this?" Zhang asked next. Dongpil replied that he could talk to a master of religious inner enlightenment. At that moment, the fourth one was talking to the doctor, and asked him to send a letter to the master of religious inner enlightenment, Seo Young-sim. He wanted to invite her to dinner tomorrow. Although the doctor explained to him that this could be dangerous, because knowing her character, it can be assumed that she will try to avoid interfering in conflicts between students. The doctor warned him that she might resent him if he hastily asked for cooperation. If you make an enemy in the person of a master of religious inner enlightenment, it can be very harmful. The fourth realized this, but he also realized that he needed to take a chance now. He believed that now that the lynx had turned into a snake, he needed to change his weapon. At the time, she was sweeping up the garbage on the street. She was shocked that Zhang had drunk so much last night, and now he was standing in front of her and practicing kicks. She remembered how they drank to the bottom, played drinking games, and how unusual that woman was to her. Now, Zhang is on the court practicing his knees and kicks. He did it incredibly well, and she had never seen him use such techniques before. "He's incredible," she said in a gentle voice, holding onto the broom handle with her hands. As expected, not everyone can be a demon lord's disciple. But how did he manage it? In her eyes, he was the third master. At the table, Dongpil said a very important thing for Zhang. The strategist general is an expert in what Zhang is looking for. Ultimately, he is the head of the army and the strongest in the blood cult. However, it is difficult to arrange a meeting with him if you are not a lord, especially lately when he is very busy. Dongpil also said that the Court of Elders is also a pretty strong organization, and in the end, they were the ones who protected the demon lord and the cult. Then, in his drunken state, he began to say that they were the best organization of the heavenly demon divine cult. At that moment, Zhang realized that he was just delusional, because Dongpil had drunk too much, and when there was no hope of hearing anything useful, he mentioned the name of Seo Yongsim, a master of religious inner enlightenment, who is definitely well versed in these matters. She is responsible for the internal circulation of money in the cult and has a lot of influence. And if she is in charge of finances, she probably has extensive information about the relationships between people. However, Dongpil didn't think she would just say anything, because it is forbidden to disseminate information that contains personal opinions. Hua interrupted their conversation when she brought drinks. She pleased Dongpil more than Zhang because he was expecting to hear something else important, but she ruined it. However, Zhang realized that the master of religious inner enlightenment, Seo, as Dongpil had said, would not be an easy person to talk to. Someone who runs the department in charge of finances has a lot of authority, and if he doesn't manage to get close to her, things could go wrong. The fourth realized that Chan was wrong to think that he would return to a safe life as soon as he left the lonely bamboo grove. It didn't matter whether he was inside or outside the cult, there would be those who would hunt him down. So now he has decided to devote all his time to training, and he needs people who will have his back and be on his side. In his past life, he learned what happens when you fight alone without friends. Because of his intense training, Hua thought he would never finish cleaning up because the stones from his punches were flying in all directions. Finally, he said he was tired and believed it was because of the pile of thoughts in his head. Looking at his floor after training, he realized that he shouldn't leave any marks. However, Hua interrupted all this when she said that Dongpil was coming to see him. But he didn't come in. He almost ran into him. He brought Zhang the sword he had been talking about. It was supposed to be similar in length to the one that Zhang used to use before. The sword really looked very beautiful when Zhang took it out of the scabbard, and when he swung it, the energy immediately dispersed around it. It was just a light swing, but what would happen if you really hit it hard? After that, Zhang said he had to leave. Dongpil asked him where he was going, and he replied that he was going to build his future. There was a fox cub sitting on his shoulder. Then Zhang invited Dongpil to join them. The high-end pavilion was the Spring Flower Pavilion. The fourth master was waiting for someone in his room. It was a master of religious inner enlightenment, Seo, who came and greeted him. He immediately invited her in and told her that he had ordered to bring the best dishes, but he didn't even know if she would like them. The Spring Flower Pavilion is under her management, and she knows perfectly well how good the food is here. The fourth one didn't even know that he had invited the owner of this place, played the role of the host, and then he laughed. A moment later, they were sitting across from each other at the table. She didn't understand why he had invited her here, but she decided to find out. He said there was no particular reason. He just wanted to treat her because she had always worked so hard for the cult. With her head down, she said it was nothing. The fourth one was already thinking about what to say to her. She is a woman who has lived for decades on the battlefield called the Divine Cult, and has climbed the career ladder to the rank of the Master of Religious Inner Enlightenment. She has a lot of confidence, and she knows her worth. You have to be careful with her, as with a chief strategist. It is not easy to organize a meeting. When the servants left, she was ready to listen to why he really wanted to see her. He did not hide the fact that he needed help, and asked her to lend him her hand. After that, she thanked him for the drinks and said, "See you later." But he couldn't help but ask her if his request was inconvenient. That was not the problem. She said she doesn't take sides when it comes to candidates. She did not know about other organizations, but for her part, she said that she could not accept such actions. Her department manages the internal affairs of the entire cult, and if they did not remain neutral, the cult would be shaken. He reflected on the fact that although she is the master of the Inner Enlightenment Department, it is only one of many organizations in the cult. In his opinion, she was making too many claims right in front of the heir apparent. A plan B was needed, and he told her that she was mistaken because he was only asking her to lend him a hand, not to join him. But from her point of view, it made no difference, and she made it clear that she was not going to support either candidate. This was her demonstration of loyalty. It was a surprise when he said she would change her mind. After thanking him for the treat, she decided to say goodbye. But after only a few steps, The fourth one said he had heard that she needed the four-leaf clover of the green turtle. This is a very rare plant that is hard to find even in Yunnan, where most of the cult's herbs grow. It can only be found near the eastern seas. He offered her this clover because he didn't really need it. By the way she turned to him, it was clear that she was very interested in it. However, he decided not to tell her how he found out about it. But it was important to her, and she persisted in asking, adding, please, to answer her question. Then he said that she should give him something in return, because he was losing something. For a moment, she thought it sounded like a threat, and she told him so. But he explained that he was just in a difficult situation, so he hoped she would understand. For a successful negotiation, one party must offer something that will be useful to the other, and he thought the four-leaf clover from the green turtle was a good example of this. She looked at him and remained silent. Her hand reached out to the table to pull back her chair and sit down. A smile began to appear on the fourth's face. Sitting down, she said, "Okay, let me hear you out first," and asked him to tell her what he needed. "Nothing in particular," he said, adding that it could be seen as a friendly favor. But he asked her to give a secret order to the servant. He came closer to her and asked in her ear if she happened to know a servant named Manhwa. She works at the residence of the third young master, and he asked her that she order this servant to report daily for 3 months on the actions of the third if possible. When asked if he planned to do anything with the third, he replied, "I thought you didn't ask questions that can't be answered." She started talking about the dangers she would face if she was caught. "But all she has to do is not get caught," added the fourth. "It's not that dangerous," he told her, and asked her to just do what she always does. And even if there was a problem, the solution would be simple. The truth was as empty as tobacco smoke, so if you get rid of the pipe, no one will know who smoked it. After these words, Ankva's ear even scratched. But their conversation did not end there, and he asked her to stop lying. She explained that she didn't even know who Manhwa was, and couldn't force her to spy. "Then make someone else, someone you can trust," he asked. He also asked her not to say she couldn't do it, because he was sure that if she wanted to, she could. Her cheeks were trembling, and she had already heard that he would not ask a second time. But the temptation to get the herb was great for her. His words that her silence would be taken as consent came as she remained silent for a few more seconds. After that, he said that in that case the deal was considered done. His men stood guard and suddenly heard a sound. The headman of the fourth master suddenly saw Chon standing in front of him and screamed loudly. There stood Chong with a fox on his shoulder, asking them how long they were going to sit at these old cups. At that moment, both the mistress and the fourth master heard the voice outside the door. Stepping on the threshold, Jung said that his patience was over. He had brought only cheap wine with him, and his cup was empty. Her opinion was that he had appeared quite spectacularly. This could be seen in the face of the fourth. He handed them a flask of wine and asked if they would continue to drink from those old cups or join him. "I had to sweat to find you," he said. "I wondered where you might be, and you were here all along, in such a beautiful place." Seo bowed before him and greeted him, but Jong didn't expect her to be formal and asked her not to. The fourth began to rage and yell at the guards, saying that he had ordered them not to let anyone in. But Jong went up to the fourth man and told him that he had come to talk to the Master of Enlightenment and asked him to calm down. However, the fourth man would not calm down and said that the Master of Enlightenment was talking to him now, and he said that it was very rude to come in so suddenly. Ignoring his words, Jong walked over to Seo and asked her if she would like to join him for the second round. Since he had just been ignored, the fourth man was not going to calm down and began to reach out to Jong. At this time, the woman apologized to him. She explained that she had already accepted the fourth young gentleman's invitation. However, Jung persisted and asked her again if she would like to join him for the second event after this meeting. She did not understand what the third one was up to. But he decided to explain and asked her if it was because she needed the four-leaf clover of the green turtle. There are usually 2 reasons why someone is looking for such a clover. One is to quickly reduce yin energy due to the peaceful depletion of yang energy, and the other is due to a malfunction of the 9 yin meridians. Both of these situations can only be resolved with the help of the green turtle quatrefoil. There is no way that a person like her did not know this. So she was in a position where this clover cannot be replaced by anything else. Then he asked her, "Did someone you know earn a blockage after trying to study yin explosions?" How did he know everything? She thought as she looked at him. Chong let the fox on the table run around and continued to explain that he didn't know what condition the patient was in. But as long as he wasn't on the verge of death, he didn't need green turtle quatrefoil. In fact, taking it might even be dangerous. Chong took the goodies from the table and continued to explain that this clover can mix yang energies instead of suppressing yin. He expressed his understanding that she was worried about the patient, but emphasized that she should not bow down to these herbs. In her eyes, Jung seemed like a very kind person. "Is this really the third young gentleman I know?" was the question that flashed through her mind. Yesterday, the fourth asked, "Has eavesdropping become his new hobby?" However, Zhang simply told him that he was standing at the door and happened to overhear a conversation about the green turtle's four-leaf clover. He went on to say that such behavior was unbecoming of a third young master of a divine cult. Slamming his hand on the table, Chan asked, "Is this true? Does he really think that such behavior is appropriate?" "So, trying to secretly kill your brother to gain power is considered appropriate behavior for the fourth young master?" he asked indignantly. Stammering, he asked, "What are you talking about?" It was easy to explain. If he really didn't know, he was a fool who couldn't control his subordinates. And if he was just pretending to be a fool, he was only bringing his name into disrepute. Zhang could understand this, and told him so. But he asked if he didn't think it was too cruel to treat even his younger brother like that. 7, who had just turned 10, was only a child, and when he heard about it, he was deeply shocked. How could he, the fourth, ask her to do such a stupid thing? The young mistress looked very weakened, and it was the fourth young master who made her so. After that, the fourth began to back down and said that he would not tolerate such slander. But without proof, there was no point in Chong making empty talk. His next question was not to this clumsy man, but to the woman. He asked her, "What are you going to do now? Is this deal meaningless now?" She immediately cut to the chase and asked if there was a way to improve her condition with the blockage of Qi. The spirit pavilion told her that she only needed to observe. It wasn't hard to explain, since Chong himself had once been under a Qi blockage, but was able to recover despite foolish attempts to poison him by switching medicines. The fourth one was still addressing the Master of Consecration, asking if she was really going to listen to this nonsense any longer. But she already understood everything perfectly well. If this case is true, then she has no reason to stay with such an evil man. She thanked him for the invitation and said she would pay for herself. With a proud expression on her face, she left this idiot. Zhang also told him that he would go with his guest. He looked at him, thinking him a fool who could barely contain himself. As he followed the woman, he asked her if she had an aversion to cheap wine, and expressed his hope that she did not. She replied, "Of course not. Everything is fine as long as the cup is clean." And so the fourth master was left alone when his servant approached him. But he came in so unexpectedly that they could not even stop him. Because everything went wrong, he now has no choice, and he thinks he will have to do everything himself. The fourth wanted to avoid personal interference, but now he thinks he has to make him pay for this humiliation and pain, convincing himself that the third one started it, not him. At the time, Zhang had already told her about the treatment methods and did not ask her to consider it a big favor, although that didn't mean it would be easy. It would probably take her about 3 days to just understand and try the treatment. At first, there would be no big changes, and Zhang couldn't be completely sure because he didn't know exactly what condition the patient was in. But with patience and perseverance, it will take about 6 months to get mobility back. Listening to this, she asked him what he was talking about. Zhang explained once again that it all depends on the patient's efforts and attitude. If his condition is not so bad and he has all the necessary data, then he might be able to move freely in 6 months. 6 months was a long time, but considering that the doctors at the Blood Spirit Pavilion couldn't even prescribe treatment, it was great news. If Zhang said so, she was ready to put aside her doubts and be honest with him. Zhang listened to her carefully. She asked him a question. "What do you want to get from me in return?" After a while, the girl stretched her arms, a little tired from the strain. Finally, she finished this long and conscientious cleaning up after Chan. Hugging herself, she praised herself for a job well done. Behind her, she heard loud explosions or impacts. She did not understand what it was. She could only guess that it could be the young master. Without thinking, she immediately ran in that direction. She took hold of the handles to open the door in front of her, and it hit her. She froze and did not finish her sentence. "The bath is not ready yet." The ominous eyes of the fourth man were looking at her. Behind that door could be someone she did not expect to see. In the bucket of water was a weapon covered with dried blood. He asked the girl not to worry, even though she saw a hook with creepy things on it. He explained to her not to worry, because he had brought her here to tell her something. Meanwhile, a nasty bug was crawling on his finger. This bug is known as a poisonous slow corrosion insect, a parasite that takes over the human body. It starts acting 2 days after entering the host's body. After that, the parasite makes its way into the internal organs and devours everything in its path, causing the host to die in agony. However, if you drink the antidote before the insect takes effect, this can be avoided. As he held the sword to the little girl's throat, she asked him in fear why he was telling her this. He explained that she must come here every day and report the actions of the third young master for the sake of the antidote. And she had to do it secretly without telling anyone. She was held by her braids, and tears were flowing in her eyes. She was a small and fragile girl, and she was treated so cruelly. They told her not to be afraid while holding this disgusting bug near her, and emphasized that as long as she obeyed their orders, she was in no danger. She was then told that she might even lose her eyesight if this parasite got directly into her eye. She pleaded with the young master to save her in such a terrible situation. Meanwhile, Jung continued to talk to the woman, who was still asking him questions about what he wanted from her. She knew he had come to her because he needed something. His knowledge had saved her life, and in gratitude she was willing to do whatever she could. The phrase ingratitude made him think. He saved lives even when he lived as a murderer. Jung Ha-jin recalled the time when he killed the political enemies of the righteous Heavenly Alliance Master. One of his subordinates ran up to him and told him that he had found 2 girls who seemed to be serving the dead. These girls were small and very afraid of what was happening, but fortunately their names were not on the list of those they were supposed to kill. However, the men believed that they had the right to decide what to do with them. They abused the girls, despite the fact that they were children. They seemed like real monsters, until Jung approached them and culturally asked them to stop it and stop. He explained to them that the task was completed and asked them to let the children go, as it was time to go back, and that it was useless to abuse them. However, this man disagreed and did not consider this activity to be useless. For him, the main thing was to get as much money as possible from the sale of these children. He was asked to simply stay out of these matters, but this scoundrel reminded Chan that he had killed his best friend's wife and children without batting an eye. And now he suddenly became good? It all started when Jung simply stabbed him in the back. It became more and more difficult for him to let those words pass through his soul. They echoed in his head over and over again. I killed my best friend's wife and children. He killed his friend's wife and children. These words haunted him, and his hand with the sword broke. It was in vain that they said this, because Jung could not stand it, and in a moment they were lying dead on the floor. They got what they deserved. Their punishment for the children's screams was the blood that remained on Jung's sword. Turning his back on the children, he asked them to walk 10 kilometers to the east, where the nearest village was. Hugging each other, the girls could not speak because of the shock of what they had seen with their own eyes. But Jung asked them to run as fast as they could before he changed his mind. He had brutally murdered their family before, but now he was acting kind to them, or so they thought. They asked him to kill them as well, and were not even going to thank him for saving them. In tears, they continued to yell at Chan that he was no different from these bastards and called him a piece of shit who was asked to burn in hell. He realized that it was hypocritical to kill their family right in front of their eyes, and then play the role of a savior. For this he was ready to curse himself even after death. He was bitter not because they had insulted him after he had saved them. He just had a feeling that his entire life, which he had led, had already turned to dust. That's why he felt sad. When he came back to reality, during a conversation with Seo, he said that he didn't need anything from her. In her eyes, it looked like this. First he said he wanted to get something in return, and then he decided not to. She thought he was giving this valuable knowledge for nothing. It was difficult for him to explain why he was giving her such a favor as he would another servant. The one who was currently under a chi blockage was obviously very dear to her, since she was looking for the green turtle quatrefoil. If it was his enemy or just a scoundrel, Chong would have asked for payment. But if this person was that important to her, he didn't even think she or he could be bad people. Knowing this, he didn't want to make a deal by trading someone's life. And if he could save a life for free, wouldn't it be cruel of him to ask for payment for it? In her eyes, the third owner was not the rude boor she had imagined. She had the impression that she was talking to a soft-hearted stranger, not a cruel third young master of a divine cult. She did not understand why he was so kind to her, and she told him so, especially since he had not even seen the man. At this point, Jung began to pour wine. He explained to her that in this world people can kill people they have never met, so why not save a stranger? After drinking with her, he felt better. He never thought she would meet the fourth young master. It was quite sobering for him to have someone sharpening a knife behind his back. It was obvious that the heirs would fight and betray each other. But even if someone had such thoughts, no one would say so openly. She wondered if there was anything else Jung wanted from her, because otherwise, he wouldn't have revealed all his weaknesses to her. The cold, hard, ruthless third young master is one of those who is satisfied with only first place, no less. That was how he was in her eyes, and she did not understand what could have changed him so much. She speculated that perhaps it was due to the blockage of chi. Another possibility was that he was lonely, like a bamboo in a grove. But whatever it was, the new third young master was a stranger to her, and she was aware of that. At that moment, he really wanted to give something in return, so he asked her to serve light meals at the restaurant more often, and asked if the Center for Inner Enlightenment was also responsible for the food. The food was delicious, but there was clearly not enough spice, and he asked her to think about people with different preferences. After that, she told him she could guess what he wanted, and it was that he wanted to know about other young masters and ladies. Well, her expectations from a master of inner enlightenment were quite high, but as he placed the cup on the table, Jung said that this was not the case. He explained that he wanted to know about all the relationships in the cult. Rays of moonlight broke through the night, lighting the way for our heroes. Having packed their belongings and all the necessary books, they were ready for the next stage. The young host expressed his sincere gratitude to everyone who helped to make this unforgettable evening possible. Their support was invaluable. However, Jong said goodnight to Lady Seo Yunshim and was about to leave. A ninja, hidden behind a mask, asked the Master of Enlightenment if there was any danger if the information she had passed on fell into the wrong hands. So Enshim reassured her advisor that everything was under control. She understood the risk, but knew that she had gained much more than she could lose. The young host walked beside Danpil, discussing the possibility of having a third round with just the two of them. Although Danpil thought it was too late, but the young man tried to convince him to at least have another drink. Seo Yunshim watched the young man move away from her, believing that she knew everything she needed to know about the important people in the cult. However, after meeting this young man, her beliefs were shaken, and the young master was forced to decide what he would do next that night. The Master of Enlightenment ordered her counselor to give her immediate news of the third master, no matter what happened. The next day, the young master decided to start reading all the books, even though it was not an easy task. After all, these books, or rather the documents from Seo Yunshim, contain details about the main figures of the cults and their secrets. Of course, Jong perceived all this with distrust, since it was a subjective judgment of one person. However, even if half of this information turned out to be true, it would be invaluable. At first glance, everything looked like a vertical organization structure that begins only with the order of the Demon Lord. However, according to Mo Ensim's investigation, this was not the case at all. She had documented all the secrets involved in the buildup of influence, as well as all the alliances, betrayals, and resentments that had arisen, for example, in this battle, where the disciples were no exception, although they were supposed to remain independent of the cult's power. Reading this, the young man realized that people's lives are really complicated. Turning the page, he came across a reference to the commander of a demon rage squad. At first glance, it seemed quite interesting, so he approached and read every word. But at that moment, his faithful friend distracted him by suggesting that he eat, since it was time to eat. A few minutes later, the young master was already sitting at the table, which was set in the best possible way. Tasting the food, Jong was surprised that the taste was not the same as usual, more bland and less expressive. When he remarked, the hostess replied that they had recently been purchasing milder-tasting ingredients, as he had recently requested. This seemed quite funny because the young owner's words sounded frivolous, and yet they did such a small thing. The girl ran up to the fox, poured some food into her plate, and asked her to try it. The girl addressed the fox with the phrase, "Master of the Forest," and the boy was surprised why she called it that. But until then, she had thought that the fox had no name. Chan emphasized that this was true because the fox had been living with him for a long time, but he had not yet come up with a name for it. Jong asked Mrs. Anhwa to come up with a name for the fox, but she didn't even know what to say. Looking at the fox, the owner noticed its big ears and suggested calling it Ears. Or, paying attention to its fluffy tail, you could call it Tail. After hearing all these names, he decided that although they were cute, they were more suitable for a little girl than for a serious man, and decided to come up with a name himself. The young owner, thinking about it, decided to name the fox Goldilocks, but the girl noticed that his name was no different from the ones she had come up with. However, Jong insisted that this name was perfect because it seemed to roll off the tongue. He turns to the fox and asks her if she likes the name, and she purrs in response. Jong decides that he is a genius for coming up with the name so quickly, but Mrs. Anhwa clearly does not share his admiration. He warned Anhwa that he would not be there tonight, so she would have to organize dinner on her own. And finally, he reminded her to never forget to eat dinner and always eat well. The young man left her, and she remained standing, waiting for him to return, and wished him to see her soon. After a while, the action moved to the training camp. One of the young men training there was showing incredible results. His martial art had improved significantly, and with lightning speed, he destroyed the wall in front of him. The blow left a deep dent in the place where it hit. This young man is quick to change tactics, demonstrating out-of-the-box thinking, and perhaps that is why he strives to become so strong. If so, he has every chance of succeeding. His training was closely watched by the three-headed master, who praised the young man for his powerful technique. He turned to the demon guardian's sword, which glowed with the red glow of the sun, saying that he did not expect him to be able to break the wall from such a distance with just a basic technique. This was the second head of the guardian court, Ji Yan. However, the demon guardian's sword recognized that his abilities were still insufficient. Despite this, Ji Yan emphasized that this young man had grown considerably while working with the third young master, and now he was not just capable, but a truly talented fighter. Although the second master was only watching him train, he had a few words to say to this young man. A third young master came into the guardian's courtyard and said that he was looking for him, to which the second master replied that he was busy training and immediately left. He also mentioned that he wanted to attend the Fierce Demon Squad's meeting today. After saying that, the sword guard's expression changed, and without waiting for the conversation to end, he abruptly charged forward. Danpil understood that his friend, the third master, shouldn't get involved with the Fierce Demon Squad, because they were all true madmen. The Fierce Demon Squad is a group whose name reflects the nature of all its members, who are famous for their madness. They adopted a fighting style that dictated ruthlessness and absolute refusal to compromise. It was the most brutal squad in the cult, known for not stopping until the enemy is torn to pieces. Moreover, for them, there is no difference between friend and foe. This band of scoundrels had gathered outside the building with their army, preparing to drink themselves into unconsciousness in a tavern. One of them broke down the door so that their team could go inside, but when they entered, it turned out that the tavern was almost empty, not a soul. The scoundrel shouted, "Where is the owner? If he hasn't opened up yet, we'll open his face!" This was the second in command of the Fierce Demon Squad, named Changwan. Changwan looked ahead and saw a man sitting with a fox. He was calmly playing with it, despite the presence of the assassination squad in the place. The young owner ignored the screams of this rascal with his whole body. However, Changwan approaches his table and tries to get his attention with a blow of his hand. Changwan wonders why this young man does not respond to his shouts. Could it be that he is a high-ranking official or a member of a cult? Zhong Hajin, not looking him in the eye, simply answers, "Yes, that's right." Turning to him, the leader of the Fierce Demon Squad remarks that perhaps he doesn't know that they have rented the entire facility for the day. Zhong Hajin emphasizes that there is a difference between a lease and a scared bar owner who has kicked everyone out of fear. "Show me the lease, and then I'll leave," he adds. This kind of arrogance from the young man hasn't been seen in a long time, and Changwan, furious, is about to punish him. But before he was about to strike, he was stopped by a woman who stepped forward. It was the young master who was waiting for her, and she appeared on time. He was the youngest and at the same time the most brutal squad leader in the cult. The commander of the Fierce Demon Squad, Hong Ren, stepped forward to deal with this impudent young man. She addressed the commander, asking why he was behaving like this in public, and asked him to stop. She then turned to the young man, who looked quite amused, and asked if he was so stupid that he didn't know who he was dealing with. But how could he not know people like them? He had called them all a bunch of crazy people and psychopaths with no manners. Hong Ren looked at this young man and did not understand why he was acting so defiantly in front of such powerful warriors. Perhaps he wanted to die? She realized that he must not have an ordinary status, or he was just provoking them to fight. However, our hero didn't even pay much attention to her, continuing to play with the fox. He thought it was funny because he didn't touch anyone, and the squad was attacking him. He invited her to sit down if she had something to say. But why should Hong Ren listen to this madman? As an argument, the young man said that his neck was hurting, and it was very uncomfortable for him to look down at her. Looking up, he noticed her demonic energy. These words were completely disrespectful to her status, and she began to get angry at the audacity. Hajin felt that her demonic energy was quite sweet and pleasant. Looking around, he saw the waiters begin to bring in the food under the watchful eye of the owner of the restaurant, who was urging them to be careful, as these dishes were the best for his distinguished guests. However, when he entered the restaurant, he saw that a young man sitting in the middle of the restaurant was the object of the squad's scrutiny. Seeing that the commander was going to kill this young man at the table, the owner rushed to stop her. But the squad reacted quickly, putting its sharp sword to the owner's neck. The second commander did not like that he dared to say anything. The commander demanded that he give 30 reasons why they could not do so, and only then would he allow the old man to live. The owner of the establishment, feeling the cold steel against his neck, was desperate. However, all he could say about this young man was that he was the third young master of the divine cult. The Fierce Demon Squad was astonished to learn that this young man was a disciple of the Demon Lord. They left him alone and continued the banquet, asking the owner when all the food would be ready. After a difficult mission, the entire Fierce Demon Squad ate, drank, and had fun as if it were their last day. The Demon Lord's disciple and the leader of the Fierce Demon Squad sat down separately from the others. The warriors did not understand why the third young master was here today. They had all heard rumors that he was supposed to be suffering from energy blockage. The warriors assumed that perhaps he was still weak, and if they intervened when something went wrong, or this young man made the commander angry, they could gain an advantage. However, the second member of the squad restrained his colleague, emphasizing that this was not a simple warrior, but a third young master, a potential heir. One of the warriors of the Demon Squad could not calmly think about what he could achieve by returning from the gate, especially in such a young body. He saw him as just a boy, albeit an heir, but he doubted that he would be of any use. After all, he was weak, and he had chosen a place like the divine cult. The possibility that the Demon Lord's heir would be able to defeat a battle squad seemed ridiculous. It would be a real blow to his reputation. The raised glass of alcohol from the young master towards the commander of the fierce demon squad symbolized the beginning of the negotiations. The girl was sure that Zhang Haijin knew in advance that all these warriors would come here today, but it seemed to her that it was time to get down to business. She looked him straight in the eye and asked him what he wanted from her. Jong Hyun was glad that she got straight to the point, because he doesn't like detours and unnecessary talk. Her words tensed the atmosphere between them like the echo of distant thunder. The guy gave her a chance, offering to surrender with the group, and everything would be resolved peacefully. Hearing the brazen words of this young impudent man, her anger grew, because the offer was unacceptable to her. If he really meant what she thought he meant, then the commander of the fierce killer squad would instantly kill him. The young owner continued, saying that if they surrendered, it would be considered a minor infraction that could only be solved by self-criticism or a pay cut, and it would not become a serious problem. No one would go to jail. The young man's insolence bothered the squad leader. He appeared out of nowhere, and now he was demanding too much. How much did he know? The girl repeated to him that they had not committed any crimes, and there was nothing to blame them for. The young man's counter-question broke the silence. If that's true, how do the fierce demons spend so much money every month? They are known for their cruelty, not their strength, because even the heavenly demon army spends about 800 Nian a month, while they spend more than 1,000. Seo Ensem's office, which is responsible for the cult's finances, provided him with information, including budget records. The fierce demon squad, which is made up of uncontrolled scum who come and go, could not have a budget that was larger than the main army. This hinted that they weren't getting their money from the budget alone, and there was one person involved who was capable of such a dastardly move. With this in mind, the young owner began to put pressure on them, believing that they had somehow received this money by accident. For example, for a certain evening with someone important. If they hand over the name of this person, he promises not to sell them in this situation. In return, they must give the name of the person who gave them the money, a demand made by the young heir. Hearing these words, the commander of the mad assassins realized that this young man's goal was different from the beginning, and that he was treating everyone as pawns. This made her incredibly angry and unbalanced. She reasoned that this young man had no proof. If he had come to teach her how to manage her money, he should at least provide proof. Jong Hyun, after drinking a glass of sake, suggested that if a crime has no evidence, it's not a crime, right? Or perhaps she has some kind of hobby that complicates the situation. In the girl's opinion, it was the third owner who was complicating things. She decided to leave without answering his questions because she thought they were pointless, and after thanking him, she stood up and headed for the exit. But he stopped her with the words, "You didn't distribute all the money you received from the fourth young master to your squad members, did you?" According to Hedgens, these expenses had become too significant, which attracted attention. Everyone knows that you are not allocated such a large amount of money to afford such expenses. It is possible that your subordinates will not escape arrest for accepting bribes from unknown persons if an investigation is launched. If this happens, your squad may be disbanded or reorganized. Hong Ryong was already tired of this analyst who was causing her trouble. Turning to him with a serious tone, she warned him that if he was really going to follow through, he should be prepared for the consequences. Hyejin, sensing the tension, repeated that everything would be fine if she voluntarily turned in the person who was giving her the money. Or is she going to pull out a sword? Hong Ryong could hardly contain herself after hearing such brazen words from the young man. She could not harm such an important person. But after he said that he was not afraid at all and that he could leave bruises, the young man got on her nerves. Soon, one of the soldiers, unable to stand the insulting words, rushed into the fight and attacked the boy. The young man reacted immediately to this attack. The drunken soldier said he would give him a bruise right away, but the boy skillfully dodged the blow, directing it in a different direction. At the same time accumulating energy in his hand, he delivered a powerful pneumatic blow to the side of this clumsy warrior. The unworthy warrior flew away, piercing the wall and bringing it down. The guy apologized for the overly strong blow, saying that he didn't mean to do so much damage. Hong Ryong, outraged by this insolence, wanted to kill the boy, although she did not plan to resort to violence, as their squad had not had any such fights for a long time. However, this impudent young man spoiled their mood, and she rushed into the fight, regardless of the possible consequences. Her powerful punch, which emanated high energy, hit the young master, who managed to block it. He appreciated her speed and sharpness, even though he flew several meters away after she hit him. When he stopped, he stuck his feet on the ground, leaving a mark from the impact. The girl was truly skilled in her skills. Looking at the young man, Hong Ren said that this was their first evening together in a year, and she would not forgive anyone who ruined this beautiful day, even if they were a disciple of the Demon Lord. Hearing these words, the boy felt uncomfortable and asked her to watch her words, as he was not interrupting their rest. He reminded her that it was her stupid subordinate who attacked him first, and their stupid pride prevents them from recognizing their own crimes. After these words, Hong Ren was finally seized with a mad rage. The warriors who were on the second floor enjoying their alcohol didn't even realize what had happened and why their leaders had started fighting, while the deputy was unconscious at the time. Her hand was filled with demonic energy, and if this impudent young man dared to oppose her, he would pay dearly for it. Hong Ren attacked the young man, reminding him that he would be better off staying home and resting if it was taking him so long to recover from the blockage. Why did this unworthy heir have to ruin her vacation? The blow hit the young master's body, although he had partially dodged it. But still, when he heard the words about the lockdown, he realized that they probably didn't know how long ago it had happened. He grabbed her by the head, got close to her face, and emphasized that she should keep an eye on what was happening in the cult more often. Her head received a strong blow from the young master. She was thrown to the side with great force and hit the wall. It was a reciprocal blow from the young master, who was just playing with her, not fighting seriously. After recovering from the blow, Hong Ren quickly got to her feet. She didn't care that he was the third young master. After this blow, she decided that she would make a corpse out of him because it was a direct assault on her pride. The young man felt only excitement from this fight and encouraged the woman to show everything she was capable of. The news quickly spread to all important points, and by the time my brother received the news, he already knew everything. The situation looked quite strange and dangerous. The guy might need help, and he was sure that he would want to stand between him and the commander of the fierce demon squad. "What should we do with this impudent fellow?" the servant asks the second master. He replies that there is no need to worry. The fierce demon commander doesn't say too much, but if the third master has hurt her pride, she will only withdraw more. So if they decide to fight, it's even better. He'll see who wins the fight, but he knows very well that no one will emerge victorious from this confrontation, because it will be quite fierce. The sphere of pure energy exploded from the woman's hand. She will show who will win this battle, because her demonic art of green jade is simply amazing. With her maneuverable strike, she sent an arrow filled with energy that spread around and headed straight for the young master. Looking at this blow, the boy remarked, "We're indoors. Why do you need to use an explosive kick?" After the young man encountered her jade demon arrow strike, the wall of the building they were in was pierced through. The boy skillfully dodged it, noting that this girl, when in anger, was indeed blind with rage, and apparently the rumors about her strength were not exaggerated. The young owner was not against fighting and all that, but he didn't want to harm someone else's property. The owner of the establishment, seeing the destruction in his restaurant, fell into a coma, salivating. The young owner said that he thought she could simply use the money of the fourth young owner and compensate for everything. The girl was not going to listen to this nonsense and tried her best to silence the heir. After all his words were not funny to her at all, and she believed that only such a scoundrel could say such a thing. When she felt a strong blow, the young master flew away and hit the wall, destroying it. It was unpleasant to receive such blows, so he decided to avoid such attacks next time because they are quite powerful. And he continued to play this fight, skillfully dodging her blows. No matter how hard she tried to kick and use different techniques, everything she did against the young master did not work until she kicked him in the head. The guy flew again with incredible force, feeling the blow on himself. It hurt him quite a bit because the kick left a significant bruise on his face. Hong Ren flew up when the young master lost his balance and wanted to silence him forever. The young master realized that the girl was getting even stronger. She was strong enough to force him to only defend himself, giving him no opportunity to attack. However, he decided that this could not go on, and he kicked her with a foot filled with demonic power. The girl skillfully defended herself and was not going to retreat. The boy wondered why the fourth master had given her money at all, because the woman's fighting skills were quite impressive. However, he doubted that she could be bribed with money. He hadn't had a fight as exciting as Hong Ren's in a long time. As he watched her reactions during the fight, he only wanted to know why she had agreed to accept the fourth master's handouts. Watching this battle, the warriors were excited by the argument because the battle was really exciting, and they were all disciples of the Demon Lord. Suddenly, the commander called out to the fierce demon squad to listen to her words. The girl said that their long-awaited dinner was ruined because of her personal problems. She assured them that she would take care of everything, even if she was punished for it, so everyone should enjoy what was left of the evening, because that was an order. The soldiers thought about her words, and it sounded pretty cool. They raised their fists in the air, declaring that the fierce demon squad was the strongest. Everyone started shouting, "Commander, go! You can do it!" having no doubt that their squad was fully living up to its name. As expected from the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult, this squad was made up of interesting people. However, watching this woman on the battlefield, the young man felt funny at her sentimental words. He, in turn, was very naive, not expecting such a talented person to accept the dubious benefits of a fourth master. He couldn't forget that she was manipulating him, and thought that maybe he should just beat her up so that she would finally start listening to him. Then a fox cub named Zolatzi ran up to the young master and started meowing. He was upset that Goldilocks had run out here, disobeying the order. At this point, Hongren began to accumulate a sphere of pure energy in her hand, and she was annoyed that the boy was distracted while fighting with her. Energy and aura enveloped her, and she realized that he had underestimated her when he started this fight. Looking at her, the young man realizes that this woman is going to use the energy wave again, accumulating power in her palm. And at the moment when Hongren was about to kill him, the fox cub was in the middle of the battle, in their path. The girl promises that she will kill the third young master and explodes with the power she has accumulated in herself. But the boy, frightened not for himself but for the fox, tries to get her attention. He asks Hongren to hold off on attacking for a while, explaining that the fox cub named Zolatzi is a cute little furry friend of the young master. He offers to take him to a safe place and then continue the fight. But these words made the woman even more angry, because for her, this fox is just a worthless creature. And she took the young master's words as a real mockery, and in a rage she launches her incredibly powerful technique towards the young master, despite the fact that the fox was in their way. Looking at this beautiful creature, the guy realizes that it is innocent and may suffer because of a ridiculous situation. He calls out to Zolatets and strives to save him with all his heart. Having activated his second technique, hypervision, which is a technique of the heavenly power of the six powers, he instantly grabs the fox in his arms. And when he finally has him, he tries to dodge the attack. He takes the blow on himself, protecting the cub with his body. This woman's incredible technique filled the entire space, and her radiance lit up the night. After this strike, there was a huge chaos in the place where the attack hit. Hongren rejoiced, believing that this impudent young man had fallen right into the center of her attack. All the soldiers saw what incredible strength their commander, the fierce demon, had. She was sure that the intruder was finished, because no one could survive such a blow. She suggested that they continue the wonderful evening. The warriors shouted in ecstasy at this action, rejoicing in their victory. At the sight of the blow was a young master. He not only survived, but also became angry with the rascal and decided to never forgive her. The girl saw that this impudent young man could still speak, and told the soldiers that if he had survived, they should take him to the young master's residence. When the soldiers came to take his body, they advised the boy to walk home on his own so that they would not have to drag him because he was heavy. The fearless warrior walked closer to the young master lying down, started to mock him, and asked the commander if it was too cruel. He laughed, thinking that now the young master would not be able to show his face in public. But suddenly his face was covered by the hands of our hero. In a rage, the young man stood up after the blow, and using his technique, sent the warrior flying an incredible distance, right through all his comrades. The warrior crashed into the squad leader, breaking through several walls and destroying a lot of furniture with his blow. They landed against the wall, not expecting such a turn of events. The jokes were over, and the young master, seized with rage, felt his strength growing. He didn't feel bad for himself, but he felt sorry for his little pet, whom he loved so much. This little creature in his arms was called Zolatzi, and he could not bear to see any scoundrels hurt her. The young master's friend finally rushed to the building, where he thought the third owner was supposed to be. As he approached the entrance, he saw the holes in the walls and realized that he had to get the young master out before it got worse. The soldiers of the fierce demon squad were lying down, having crashed into the walls and formed funnels with their bodies after being hit. Hongren couldn't understand how this impudent young man had survived her strike. In addition, he had been struck by the green jade demonic art, but he was still standing on his feet and radiating such incredible energy. She didn't hold back her power as she struck this blow, using her technique to its fullest potential. The young master's friend runs inside and asks if he is even okay, offering to get him out of there immediately. However, the energy around the young master flashed with incredible power. The ground shook, and he blazed with demonic energy, ordering his friend Danpil not to stop him. He would not leave until he had defeated everyone. Danpil begged Chan to stop, not to do anything stupid, and just go home. Looking back, Danpil asked the woman how she knew he was the third young master of the divine cult. Hongren, in turn, said that this guy should shut up because it was none of his business and get out of here. But at that moment, the young man's fist was already near her face. Losing her guard, she received a blow that struck at her dignity and pride. Like the last rascal, she flew out of the building like a bouncing ball. It was just incredible. Falling to the ground, she bounced off it like a stone bouncing on water, having bounced for a very long time. She could not understand what had happened and why such a powerful energy was coming from this young man. She could not even see his movements. She had much more combat experience. So where did this brat learn to fight to be able to dodge and attack so skillfully in such a short life? Jung Hyun turned to her and said, Did you really think that you could leave here alive after you raised your worthless hand to Zalotzi? The girl realized that things were going badly. She had thought to be lenient because he was the third young master, but now she saw that he did not value his life at all. All the while, Danpul was running around them, shouting, "Stop, stop!" But no one paid him any attention. Suddenly, a blue blob of energy began to radiate from Hongren's eyes, filling her palms with power, cutting through the darkness like lightning in a stormy sky. She activated the fierce demon divine fist technique. This crazy woman really intended to kill the young master. Rushing at him, she declared that he was a corpse. But the guy stood there like a stone and didn't even try to dodge her blows. Thousands of her fists came down on him. She beat him mercilessly, screaming, "Die! Die!" But despite all these blows, he remained unharmed. Eventually, he stopped the girl by saying, "Are you done?" All this time, he had been skillfully dodging her attacks without taking any damage, and he calmly approached her. With a single movement of his hand, he directed a red aura at her back, striking her with incredible force. She fell off her feet, hitting the ground, and rolled down. For the young master, her movements seemed very slow. The woman got up from the ground, shaking off the dust, and called the boy a real, little ratty thing. Hearing such unworthy words, the heavenly demon could no longer tolerate such behavior. Rage filled his fist, and slamming it against the ground, he unleashed an incredible force, destroying everything on the way to Hongren. She couldn't understand what was happening when the ground began to collapse beneath her, causing her to jump up. The guy, seized with rage, didn't listen to her at all, having only one desire: to destroy her. The woman frantically walked forward, not knowing how to defeat him. She might have thought he was a real rat, but she could not call him a Zalotzi. She was sure that she could easily defeat him with the divine fist of the fierce demon, but all her punches flew past the guy. None of them could hurt him except for the kick, and at the moment when she was sure that she would destroy him, the guy didn't even blink, taking the blow, and flooded with red light, defiantly asked her if she even knew who she was dealing with. The commander's powerful divine fist was unable to pierce his demonic energy. But how was that possible? The young master's counterpunch was extremely hard, and struck the woman with incredible destructive force. Flying in the air, she realized that this young man was incredibly strong, and if all the Demon Lord's disciples were like this, it was alarming. In her entire career, she had never met anyone so strong, and now she was lying on the ground like a piece of trash. The guy kept attacking, and every time she tried to dodge, she realized that she might die. In none of her battles had she ever met such powerful opponents, and now it could have ended that way. She had survived many dangers, but she could die because of a fox. Her warriors watched their commander get hit, and they felt very sorry for her, but they couldn't do anything, which was especially humiliating for her. Looking at herself from the outside, Hongren realized that she looked pitiful and could not even do anything. And at that moment, her whole life flew before her eyes, and the young master's fist flew straight into her face, announcing that it was over. She thought of her dead, fierce demon squad leader, and her entire life flashed before her eyes at that moment. She remembered how she had joined the cult as a child because her family was destroyed under pressure from all sides, and neither her family nor even others liked her. At the time, she didn't care how she was treated. She was surviving as best she could. When her family broke up, she joined many cults and was sent to the Fierce Demon Squad, saying that they were just a bunch of people the cult didn't care about. She wasn't going to give up and fought to the last, even though she was a child, and no one pitied her. Despite this, all her life she was not recognized, and she was always an outsider. She fought, won, and did not give in to anyone. She went through many battles and killed many people. She killed to prove that she was a real commander. That's how she survived all this time. Then she had a battle with the former commander of the squad. He was an incredibly strong opponent, but she defeated him with incredible effort, and at the cost of incredible losses. Even losing an eye, she took his place. She began to build her own fierce demon squad. Under her leadership, the squad gained respect and became an important part of the cult, which was now protected and revered. Soon, no one in the cult dared to speak their name without due respect. But right on this battlefield, she realizes that she could die now. And yet, as the fist approached, she gathered all her strength, activated her power, and repelled the attack. The soldiers began to worry about their commander, not realizing what was happening to her. The demoness, in turn, threw Chan aside. He calmed down a bit and said with a smile, "Look what happened to you," while she was gathering her strength after his blows. It was incredible. She was really tough. She had risen to a new level, and her opponent had underestimated her. An incredible aura arose around her. She looked at her prey like a hunter. She repeated over and over again, "I am the commander of the fierce demon. My name is Hongren, and I will not give up just like that." She activated her inner strength so much that the ground beneath her began to collapse. The boy noticed that her aura changed, turning blue, and so did her sword. She had reached the level where her sword obeyed her will, and it was amazing. As a martial arts student who trained with a sword, he too decided to demonstrate his weapon. Looking into her eyes, he was filled with power, and was looking forward to seeing what her sword would do in this fight. As a martial arts student who trained with a sword, he decided to demonstrate his weapon, encouraging her to show what her sword could do. The young master understood Hong Ren's feelings perfectly due to his hypersensitivity. At the moment, she filled her sword with an incredibly strong aura and vowed to destroy Yung Hajin. She was filled with anger, anxiety, and stubbornness. She felt a sense of honor, but she was also driven by the fear of losing recognition. When he realized that all of this was connected to her desire for recognition, he looked at her, realizing that she already realized she had lost. He thought she had lost her mind, but it seemed she still had some common sense left. And as a winner, the young master decided to teach her a lesson. He stood in front of this woman, preparing to inflict a crushing defeat on her. He told her to watch carefully because they were about to hit the wall of reality. At the moment her punch was approaching the young master, he countered it with his hand. An incredibly strong punch illuminates the dark night with its brightness. The boy stopped this powerful blow with his palm, protecting himself, but everything around them was destroyed. Hong Ren breathed heavily while holding her sword, and her aura began to fade. She asked the young master how he was feeling. The young man couldn't believe it as he looked at his hand. It was just unbelievable, because she had pierced his defense, even though he had done his best, using a lot of dark energy. Looking at his hand, he saw how deep the wound was after her sword had struck it. The arm that should have been protected by the wall of steel was pierced. This skill, which resembled an explosive mountain punch, increased the internal strength and turned the arm into something like steel, capable of destroying anything it touched. Looking at Hong Ren, the boy realized that she was much better with swords than he expected, since she was able to pierce the steel wall and injure his arm. A few minutes later, red blood began to flow to the ground. It was Hong Ren's blood. She spat it out, not realizing what had happened. The guy standing next to her admitted that it was amazing, but now her strength was exhausted and she could barely stand. The guy, feeling great, offered her a choice. He gave her a choice. Either she would give up and admit that she had received money from the fourth young master, or she would give her life for disrespecting the third young master and trying to kill him. Hong Ryong refused to comply with his demand, shouting at him to shut his mouth, calling him a bastard. When he saw her reaction and how she was going to proceed, he realized that she clearly didn't like the option of death, especially when someone else was telling her what to do. Although he had been rude, despite her fragile ego, he intended to fulfill what he had promised. The girl was already tired of this conversation and asked him to end it right there. An incredibly strong blow flashed next to her head. It seemed like the end, but all the young man did was hit her eye patch. When she opened her eyes, she realized that she had survived despite her plight. The young man noted that she used to behave like a mad dog, but now she looked more like a sheep. He wondered why she didn't dodge his blow, but the woman had no strength left. She lowered her sword, accepting death, recognizing that she had lost and had to die, because all the battles she had fought always ended with the death of one of the parties. Hong Ren said that her life was far from carefree. She was always balancing on the brink of life and death, and she never regretted it. She knew that one day she would die by someone's hands, just like the people she killed herself. She believed that it could happen today, and the young master asked her if she really believed that. Hong Ren replied that she didn't know if it made any sense, because she didn't see any meaning in it at all. The young master looked at her pitiful condition with his own eyes. Raising his fist, he punched her with all his might, and left a considerable dent in her. But it was only a blow for her disrespecting him and for her other offenses. Hong Ryong warned him not to think that if he let her live, she would be his obedient dog just because he spared her. He had no intention of contacting her any further, because he had already crushed the bait, and now believed that he could use her to put pressure on the fourth young master. They just happened to be in a fight to the death. After Zhang Hejin left the battlefield, he approached the owner of the establishment, wanting to wake him up. He left a few coins to repair the building, although he wasn't sure if it would be enough. He also sternly warned Hong Ren that if he heard that she had stolen money from him, he would indeed kill her. But he pointed out that she was not a little street hooligan and should not do such things. The young owner jokingly said that hooligans are just saints compared to them, and calling the woman a fool left her. He also took his friend Damping with him because they had a lot of things to do. The soldiers of the fierce demon's troop ran up to their mistress, asking if she was all right. She replied that she was not at all. She accepted her defeat calmly, and said that they would clean up the place, order drinks, and maybe even dinner, as they had planned. She was holding a bandage that had been covering her eye for a long time. She used to think that all young owners and heirs were scoundrels and deceivers, but when she met the third one, she realized that he was different. As he walked away with his friend, the young master apologized for causing so much attention over a nonsense. He will apologize for a long time, because he did not think that the trick would be so strong, although perhaps he expected more. Meanwhile, his friend almost had a heart attack. At this time, Hong Ren was wiping the blood from her face as she watched the young master leave. She could not accept the fact that he called her a fool, because he himself was a young idiot who only had brute force. When midnight came, the fourth young master meditated under the moonlight. He lit meditation candles, enjoying their fragrance. He had been accumulating energy for a long time while cultivating. Everything around him was enveloped in divine smoke. He pondered the situation, and was convinced that the transfer of money to the commander of the fierce demon squad had remained a secret. It is said that all secrets come out sooner or later, but this secret was not to be revealed under any circumstances. The only one who could know about it was the Master of Enlightenment, and according to her, she was not going to interfere in the conflicts between the heirs, although his brother Sorian might have made her change her mind. But it didn't matter anymore. Very soon no one would see him again, he thought. His incense was saturated with a deadly poison that penetrated every cell. And let this smoke filling his lungs paralyze his body. He will die while meditating. Raised above the ground, the master thought about his plan. The seventh young master was lying in his bed, with incense candles filling his room with smoke. He was getting sicker and sicker from this smell, and he hadn't even eaten anything all day. Everyone understood that this was very bad, and the boy could not even sleep without these incense. These candles were given by the fourth young master, who told him to light them by the bedside of the seventh young master when he was sleeping. The doctor brought them and asked the girl not to ask any questions. But how could she put them by the bedside if she did not even know if they would do him any harm? The girl could not do that. The doctor had already told this maid that in 2 days the parasites in her body would start acting up if she didn't take the antidote in time, and that would cause her unbearable suffering. The question was not whether she could do it, but that she had to do it if she wanted to survive. The memories in Ankva's head sounded frightening, filling her with fear, and being transported to these memories, she could not come to her senses. The moment the young man called Ankva, she immediately ran to him. He asked her to bring some food for his pet, Zolotets. Of course, she did it immediately. She brought the food right away, but the guy noticed that something was wrong with her lately. Lately, Manhwa looked like a tired piece of life, and while stroking his pet, he decided to find out what happened to her. Looking at the fox, he noticed that it was behaving strangely, as if it were upset for no apparent reason. The fox ran up to him, not even realizing that he was in danger. The chi energy when he picked up his pet seemed as if they were connected. Thinking about it, he realized that it sounded like nonsense, because sharing chi energy with an animal is something unrealistic. But looking at it, he realized that it was no ordinary animal. In its eyes, he saw a divine reflection, and those eyes were as if they belonged to a living person. Suddenly, people burst into his room, claiming to be from the criminal court. They knocked on the young man's door and asked him to open it. His friend runs into the room saying that the criminal court is looking for the guy. It seems that the commander of the fierce demon squad has surrendered. She confessed her disrespect for the third young master and that she wanted to kill him. The young man did not immediately understand why she did this. Soon he went to the room where she was being held. It was cold in the dungeon, and the woman was chained. But why did she do it? The young master told her that he had forgiven her for her crime by striking her. But as she sat chained in the dungeon, she looked away from the young master and did not care. The boy couldn't help but wonder why she had made such a fuss, and it irritated him. Why did she have to make such a choice? Hong Ren exploded with rage, saying that she was sitting here for a reason. The young master did not understand what these strange actions were. Isn't it forgivable to attempt to kill a young master and his pet? As soon as she confessed to her actions, she could have had her head blown off. If she didn't want to live, she could have just told him, and he would have killed her then. The woman felt pain in her chest. She was offended, and she asked him to end it right now if he wanted to. Zhang realized that she was really out of it and asked her to pull herself together. He remembered their fight and was sure he hadn't hit her in the head. So what had gone wrong? Hong Ryong was screaming that he had hit her very hard, in fact. Sitting in front of her, the guy leaned over and asked her to stop talking nonsense, saying that she needed to get to the point. What was she really up to? But she had no reason to tell him, and it was quite unexpected. The guy looked at her with a serious look. Then the girl's hand shook. The fact was that she had made a promise to the fourth master. And all this was done to keep the promise. But if she wanted to keep quiet, she had to go all the way. So why did she confess and make him come here? And then the boy realized that she could have confessed to hurt him. But even so, he knew that she was the commander of the fierce demon squad for a reason, right? He called to those outside to come over to him. He told the guards to release the squad leader, even though she was trying to kill him. When asked why he decided to do this, the guy said it was just a lesson because he liked her. Her face was such that he could not restrain his power even if she was safe. She was still a cult follower. Her actions seemed senseless, but given the circumstances, he couldn't just let her go. However, the guy exploded in rage, realizing that the person involved deserved to be held accountable. After that, the soldier understood his arguments and was about to release her. Heijin looked at the woman and offered her a drink with him, but she did not answer him and just sat there silently. If she doesn't say anything, I'll take it as a positive answer. When she has time, let her come over and we'll have a drink together, he said. But let her remember to bring her own appetizer so as not to burden my servants with work, he added with a smile.